Chapter 1668. The speed of light was incredible and beyond people's cognition. It was not an exaggeration to describe it as fleeting. When moving forward, there would be a huge roar, and the vibration made people's eardrums hurt. Who is it? With such a huge movement, Tatsumi also noticed it at the first time. As soon as he turned around, a slap flew over. Bang bang bang. Kakaka. Tatsumi's head was hit a few times by an extremely violent fist, and he could still hear the sound of kakaka. His nose and teeth were broken by the owner of this light. Ouch, it hurts. Tatsumi's eyes were filled with tears due to the pain. He covered his old face with both hands and rolled on the ground in pain. Who did it? Who is it? A voice full of hatred jumped out from Tatsumi's throat. He finally escaped from the wolf's den of the night raid. He thought that he would have no worries after joining the revolutionary army. Who knew that God didn't give him face? He didn't escape far before an unexpected disaster came. Tatsumi, you heartless thing, you want to run away after taking the things of the night raid? At least take off, haunted spirit, and give it to me. The light turned into reality and condensed into a handsome face. The person who came had a jade-like face. His gentle face was as warm as the sun, and his smile made people involuntarily open their hearts. Only the cold eyes were as terrifying as the devil. It was not difficult to see that this person was like a smiling tiger. He was temperamental, and no one could figure out what he was thinking. Dustless. Tatsumi was furious when he saw it. His eyes were filled with hatred when he met his enemy. Before escaping the detection range of the night raid, Tatsumi unlocked the haunted spirit armor. Now because of the appearance of Dustless, Tatsumi once again used his trump card. Due to the deep resentment between the two, haunted spirit felt the anger in Tatsumi's soul and mutated. The dazzling light spread out. At the waist, a pair of broken wings flashed. They were full of incomplete traces like broken scrap iron. But even so, Tatsumi's momentum was several times stronger than before. Kakaka. The ground beneath his feet also began to crack chaotically. Yo! Seeing this, Dustless showed a rare expression of appreciation and complimented, "Your willpower is not bad. Ghost Haunt has sensed your anger and evolved. Do you hate me so much, Tatsumi? Do I need you to tell me whether I hate you or not? I didn't mean to go against you, but you always make things difficult for me and suppress me. Today, it's time to end the grudge." Clenching his fist, Tatsumi's confidence soared. Dustless smiled and said disdainfully, "Do you think you've improved just because you've grown trash wings? Big mistake. Rotten oranges will always be rotten oranges." Swish. Swish. Just as he finished speaking, Dustless's figure flashed and pounced over with a strong pressure. Still so fast. Tatsumi caught the afterimage coming toward him and looked cautious. Then, he carefully observed for a while and said in a relaxed tone, "But this time, I can see your figure clearly." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Tatsumi also rushed out without fear. With a fearless expression, he rushed toward Dustless. His huge fist was clenched into a fist and he punched with all his strength. Bang bang bang. In the air, a white shock wave broke out and lifted everything around. The ground under their feet collapsed and turned into a big pit in an instant. It hurts. The two fought with pure strength. Tatsumi's face was pale and he tried to hide his twitching arm because of the pain. As small as a grain of sand. Tatsumi concealed it quite cleverly. Dustless could still hear his rapid breathing several times faster. No matter how heavy the sand is, when the storm comes, he can only let it go. The other hand suddenly picked up and aimed at Tatsumi's eyebrows. A very destructive light condensed in an instant. He flicked his finger, laser. So fast. Tatsumi's pupils suddenly shrank. When the light flashed, he felt that something was wrong and he moved to the left. Gotcha! Although Tatsumi's speed could be called lightning, he was still a little inferior to Dustless. The armor on his face collapsed in an instant and turned into 4 or 5 fragments. I just lost. Tatsumi was still in shock and subconsciously touched his cheek. Although the penetrating light did not penetrate his head, it made Tatsumi feel the fear of a brush with death. That feeling of almost stepping into the netherworld with a single step was truly oppressive. God did not abandon me. Scratching his palm, Tatsumi, who felt the stinging pain, exhaled heavily. Just as he was about to prepare for the battle, a ray of golden light rushed forward. Puchi! There was no time to dodge. Tatsumi's whole body was penetrated by the light, leaving a scorched scar on his chest. Sorry, Tatsumi, I really hate you. Maybe you will know why I am targeting you. In fact, there is no special reason. It's just an instinct for hunters to kill beasts when they encounter them. That's all. You. Boss Negenda can't order you to kill me. You are taking revenge. Tatsumi vomited blood and roared at Dustless. His mouth was full of blood traces. He was like a vampire. Tatsumi, listen to me clearly. In my dictionary of life, there is no such thing as order. I follow Negenda's order just to pass the time. If she makes me feel bored one day, I can still kill the night raid. No one in this world can give me orders. After the voice fell, Dustless rotated the heaven cluster cloud sword condensed by the glint fruit a few times. Tatsumi's internal organs were instantly crushed. Chapter 1669. Puchi. The severe tingling spread all over his body. Tatsumi's face was as pale as paper, and he was sweating like rain. He felt that his vitality was fading rapidly, and a sense of powerlessness deep in his soul swept everywhere in an instant. His eyes even saw the grim reaper who came to kill him with a sickle. In this short period of time, even Tatsumi's black hair turned white a lot. You killed your companion, the boss will definitely not let you go. Tatsumi shouted with a face full of hatred, soon, we will meet in hell, and fight again in the next life. Tut tut, your hope is doomed to fail. Dustless raised the corner of his mouth and smiled, kill your companion. To tell you the truth, your good brother, Bullet, was killed by me. But what is the result? I still live happily until now, but you, tut tut, your appearance is really miserable. Seeing Tatsumi was so stubborn, Dustless stabbed Tatsumi's heart with the heaven cluster cloud sword and penetrated deeper. Puchi. The burnt wound was full of burning smell. Tatsumi's flesh was burnt, making a disgusting smell. Bah, this smell is disgusting. How many days have you not taken a bath? Dustless looked disgusted and kicked Tatsumi out. You damn guy, I will not forgive you even if I become a ghost. Tatsumi looked at Dustless with hatred, his scarlet eyes remembered Dustless in his mind, and then he was unwilling to die. Idiot, there are many people who hate me, who do you think you are? Glancing at Tatsumi's body faintly, Dustless's pupils flashed a sharp light. Amaterasu. Tatsumi's whole body burned with black flames, his body was slowly swallowed and gradually disappeared. Even Dustless did not let go of his taigu, haunted by evil spirits, he destroyed all of it and burned it into black residue. You are really ruthless, you deserve to be. Istetha's delicate body flashed to Dustless's side, she looked at Tatsumi's disappearing body coldly, only this black flame made her feel the fatal threat. How many trump cards does this man have that I don't know about? Her bright eyes were even more lonely. Istetha felt powerless for a deep-sea shark like Dustless, and at the same time, she became more firm with Dustless's plan to make a human being. I'll borrow your seed to destroy you. Istetha felt that this plan was quite good, at least it was the only strategy she could think of to deal with Dustless. Go back and say that this guy was killed by the Revolutionary Army, and the taiga was also taken away. Dustless took back his sight, he finally left Istetha's back. What if I expose your plot to kill Tatsumi? Staring at Dustless's cold face, Ishteth pointed to her chin and teased, if that's the case, you will be betrayed by everyone. Extremely bored, Dustless glanced at Ishteth. He said with a resolute tone, if you want to report me, you will not gossip here. Moreover, compared with each other, Najenda believes me more. I can totally bite back and say that you plot to frame me and seduce me to sleep with you. You're really shameless. Ishteth was stunned, looking at Dustless who was not blushing and breathless. This guy looked like the kind of person who was used to lying, he was so calm. It's time to end it, immediately destroy this decaying transition, and then take you to see a new world. In the ruins of the night raid, in the temporary room. Is Tatsumi dead? It's a pity that he has worked for us for so long. Hearing the news of Tatsumi's death, Najenda's face was full of regret, but she was not sad. Yes, he wanted to join the Revolutionary Army, and I caught him. In the end, he couldn't stand my torture, he told us all his plan to frame us, and his body was eaten by the dangerous species. Dustless said seriously and carefully, it was very bewitching. It was obviously made up, but everyone had a kind of immersive experience, witnessing the scene of Tatsumi's betrayal in the night raid. A traitor is just a traitor, his death is not regrettable. Mine curled her lips disdainfully, her mouth was full of disgust and disgust. I was blind. Leonie also had a black face, she was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She wanted to skin Tatsumi alive. If Tatsumi was in front of her at this moment, she might whip his body. I didn't expect him to be a traitor. I really should kill him myself. Akane's taiju was pulled out of the scabbard. I didn't know that the guy Tatsumi was a traitor, we were all careless. Chelsea had a lollipop in her mouth, and the cold light flashed in her eyes. For traitors, no matter who they were, they had no good feelings. Forget it. Tatsumi's matter is over. The next step of the plan is to destroy the Empire. We will arrange the plan ourselves. In the future, the Night Raid and the Revolutionary Army will be the enemy. When saying this, the boss Najenda's tone was full of confidence. Although there were only a few people in the Night Raid, the soldiers of the Night Raid or the Empire were not as powerful as the members of the Night Raid. With our strength, we can completely kill the Empire's army, and then annihilate the Revolutionary Army. No force can stop the advance of the Night Raid. Speaking of this, Dustless's tone suddenly stopped. The Empire and the Revolutionary Army were finished, and a new ruler must be needed to control the Empire. There was no doubt that Dustless was the most suitable person. After all, the person with the bigger fist had the final say, but he was not interested in being the emperor. He still released Infinite Tsukuyomi to continue to destroy the world. Chapter 1670. At this moment, the imperial capital was getting dark. It was the opposite of the unprecedentedly prosperous city in the past. The Revolutionary Army set fire everywhere, the empire had already been crumbling and could collapse at any time. The only comfort was that the members of the Revolutionary Army and the Night Raid were not in a hurry to attack and collapse the imperial capital. This also made everyone a little more comforted. At least, Minister Ernest was extremely happy. Gulp. Inside the palace, the luxury was not reduced. Minister Ernest still had dinner with the emperor as usual. Especially Minister Ernest, the speed of eating meat was more exaggerated than before. He was afraid that he would not be able to eat meat when he went to hell. Your Majesty, you don't have to worry. It's only a matter of time before those who dare to provoke the Empire are suppressed by your power. The strongest Taiju, Supreme Taser, is the ultimate existence of God. People as strong as General Death were defeated by you in the end. Minister Onesta sucked up to the king while he hurriedly swept through the dazzling array of food on the table. I hope so. This time, the little emperor frowned. He was not as easy to fool as before. He was scared and said, "But now, except for the imperial capital, we have lost the other territories of the empire. Sooner or later, I will become the sinner of the empire's destruction." Minister Ernest was stunned when he heard the words. He did not expect that this stupid emperor would say such a thing. He could only continue to fool him. "Your Majesty, you don't have to care about those unruly people. As long as you control Supreme Taser, you can crush everything, just like how you suppressed the traitor General Esteth. Defeat all the enemies. Defeat all the enemies." Boom, boom, boom. The sound of dead silence fell, then a black shadow fell from the sky. The interior of the luxurious palace suddenly trembled, and there were cracks around the walls. "Do you want to die by breaking into the palace? Come on, kill this guy for me." Minister Onesta, who was frightened, roared. The moment the tremor appeared, he hurriedly crawled under the table, losing all his face. "Damn it!" Minister Ernest looked at him angrily. After seeing the person who came, he immediately cried, "Your Majesty, this evil man named Dustless in front of you is the culprit of the collapse of the empire." "You..." The young emperor stared at Dustless with an ignorant look. Obviously, he had been deceived and manipulated by Minister Onesta. No, to the young emperor, Minister Onesta was his father. TSK, the guards of such a huge palace have all been annihilated. If you have any skills, take them out. I'll give you a chance to bloom, then you can atone for your sins with your deaths. You want me to atone for my crimes with my death?" When the emperor heard the arrogant and disrespectful tone, he flew into a rage. A special energy fluctuation appeared on his body, and the room started to tremble and collapse at an accelerated rate. Bang! With a loud bang, the palace turned into ruins. The dark and oppressive room was lit up quite a bit. Looking up, it turned out that a gentle light was descending from the sky. Ayo. After a few dozen seconds, the bright sky darkened once again. A black shadow that was dozens of meters tall turned from nothingness to reality, and its mighty and extraordinary figure was exposed to the world. What the hell is that? A group of members of the night raid who raided the palace looked up at the sky, looking at the unparalleled height and the domineering temperament. Their scalps were numb. "I heard from Dustless that this is the strongest Taigu, Supreme Taser. I didn't expect it to have such a powerful power. With such a terrifying height, not to mention that it is a Taigu, even if it is a worm, it can turn the world upside down when it moves." Akame and others were horrified. Even if Dustless had given them a precaution before, they were still shocked by the thunder at this moment. The oppression brought by this super monster was too deep. Just a casual glance from him would make one feel as if there was a sharp blade on one's back. It wasn't just the night attack. All the residents of the empire felt as if there was a huge guillotine on their foreheads. They all ran out of the empire with all their might. "Dustless, is that the strongest Taigu you said? Is it also the first Taigu? Only the inheritor of the royal blood can open the Supreme Taser. Its appearance seems to be more exaggerated and tall than last time." Looking at the behemoth, even if she saw it last time and fought with it once, Esteth also lost her mind for a while, and her eyes were empty. She didn't know when she had already stood beside Dustless. "Ha ha ha. You two damn guys, this time you are going to die. You will definitely die, and Supreme Taser will destroy everything." Minister Ernest laughed crazily, and even danced like a child. "What is our result? You can't see it, and your current identity is just a stray dog. Don't you think you are too talkative?" With a flash, Dustless turned into a huge light and arrived in front of Minister Ernest. Staring at his fat body, he quickly waved out a few light beams in succession. Poochie! 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 The blood flew, and the ground was instantly filled with purple-red blood stains. Looking up, Minister Ernest's arms and legs were cut off, and the blood dyed the whole ground red. The air was smelly, it seemed to be smelled by the purple-red blood. Aw, aw, aw. It hurts. Your Majesty, revenge for me, kill this bastard. Minister Ernest screamed miserably, the hysterical voice was full of endless hatred for Dustless. Tut tut, dying casually is too easy for you, old dog. Death, I will tell you a good way to torture people. Find a large porcelain bottle, throw Minister Ernest into it, put poisonous snakes, rats and scorpions in it, and then put honey on Minister Ernest's body, and finally, put tens of thousands of ants in it. Puff! Dustless hadn't finished his words when the old guy fainted. Looking carefully, his breath had disappeared. It wasn't hard to see from his frightened face that this old guy was scared to death. Chapter 1671. This scene was too sudden, even his death didn't expect such a dramatic change. Minister Ernest, who was regarded as a devil by everyone, was scared to death by the absurdity. Hee hee. The torture methods you said are good, we are really the same kind of people, Dustless. Estetha's mouth was flirting with a smile, looking at Dustless's eyes, full of emotions. This guy, staring at Estetha's evil eyes, the spring-watery eyes almost melted Dustless's heart. It was very warm, but Dustless was not happy, instead, he was a little creepy. It seemed that Estetha intended to test the methods just mentioned on Dustless once. You dare to, inside Supreme Taser, the Emperor's indignant roar sounded, followed by a dark red halo, suddenly appeared in the boundless void, and the overwhelming storm swept the entire imperial capital. Damn it, that guy is desperate. Let's retreat. Najenda saw the flash in Supreme Taser's mouth, and her face was full of fear. The power of the lingering fear could be clearly felt hundreds of meters away. Her skin was about to be torn, and even blood could not help but overflow through the pores. Everyone's heart was uneasy and full of despair. At their level, if they were hit by Supreme Taser, their bodies would be shattered. Hee hee, you dare to use the candlelight to make a fool of yourself. No wonder this country is going to be finished, even the Emperor is an idiot. Dustless sarcastically said. You, bastard. Inside the Supreme Taser, the veins on the Emperor's forehead bulged. He clenched his teeth and spat out the 4 words. Killing the Emperor's father, Minister Ernest, was a huge blow to the young Emperor's mental state. Boom boom boom. The originally small energy ball, in an instant, responded to the Emperor's anger and became bigger. Go to hell, traitor of the Empire. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The Emperor's scream fell, the huge red energy ball cut through the void, the light of destruction was about to engulf Dustless. Boom boom boom. Because it was too powerful, before it even landed on the ground, the hurricane created by the beam of light had already destroyed a massive number of buildings. The bustling imperial city was left in a mess. Staring at the falling light, under everyone's puzzled gaze, Wu Qin lazily raised his right arm, clenched his hand into a fist, and made a posture of preparing to attack. It seemed that he wanted to defeat the light with his bare hands. Could it be that this fellow wants to catch it with his bare hands? The members of the night raid widened their eyes, including Estetha. They were all surprised. She once had a confrontation with Supreme Taser. The result was very unfortunate. At that time, Estetha, who was sealed by Minister Ernest's trick, was not the opponent of this behemoth at all. Therefore, Estetha was quite familiar with the power of Supreme Taser. Its strength was unprecedented. Almost no living species in the sea, land, and air could compete with it. Bring it on. Dustless glanced at the incoming attack, his right arm was covered with armament hockey, his feet slammed on the ground, and he jumped up and flew towards the flash. Boom boom boom. The light hit Dustless's body, everyone was nervous. They thought that he would be blown up by the energy beam, but the result was just the opposite. Phew phew phew. The fluctuation that stopped was sublimated again, the movement that was bigger than before was shaking. The unparalleled light did not fall this time, but rose quickly. How is it possible? It can blow that thing away. The members of the night raid were stunned. Everyone looked at the rising light. Everyone's thinking was subverted, and their brain cells were suddenly not enough. They saw that Dustless hit all the light back with his own strength. Is that guy a human being? Not to mention the power of the beam, the temperature can melt a human being, even the bones can be dismembered. Dustless actually hit it back with his mortal body. Is his body made of iron that can ignore the high temperature? No, even if the body is made of iron, it will be melted when it touches the high temperature. How hard is his body? Estetha's small mouth was wide open, and her mouth twitched slightly. Even if she tried to hide the shock in her heart, she was still shocked and speechless. What would happen if a human was close to hundreds or even thousands of degrees Celsius? Needless to say, this person's end would definitely be nothing. But Dustless was still fine at the moment, completely ignoring the blazing high temperature. Not only that, but he also hit back with an even more powerful force. What kind of joke is this? The little emperor, who was inside the supreme taser, was also taken aback. His eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. Retreat quickly. The emperor panicked and quickly controlled supreme taser, trying to avoid the light that distorted time and space. Although the idea was beautiful, the reality was cruel and ruthless. Supreme Taser, this kind of behemoth, is similar to Susanoo. Its attack power is very strong, but its movement is slow. It can even be said to be sluggish, because this kind of move is originally used to attack the enemy, not to escape. Therefore, it was inevitable that the Emperor was hit, and he was sent flying by his own move. Boom boom boom. Attacked by its own move, Supreme Taser's head was fatally injured, and a blazing flame mushroom cloud rose, and the high temperature melted everything. Half of the majestic Supreme Taser's head was destroyed, and even its abdomen was severely injured, showing a scorched pit, and all the equipment was sunken in. Poochie. Suffering such a serious injury, the Emperor inside was naturally not spared. The tyrannical power wave directly made him dizzy, and his head was dizzy, and he could fall at any time. Looking around, Supreme Taser's entire body was emitting black smoke. Chapter 1672. Boom boom boom. Supreme Taser finally became an arrow at the end of its flight. Under the horrified gaze of everyone, the huge body finally tilted at an angle. Is it over? The members of the night raid wiped their sweat and sat down at the same time. Their tense nerves also suddenly calmed down, revealing a trace of joy after surviving the disaster. It was certain that if it weren't for Dustless, they would not be crushed by the huge body of Supreme Taser. As a result, these towns didn't even leave the remains of the body. Usually when it's over, it's not over yet. The roar of the sky was everywhere, spreading to every corner of the void. Looking up, Supreme Taser, who was originally tilted, actually stood up again at an incredible angle. This is the strongest Taigu, such a huge monster, it may be destroyed by one move, especially my move. The Emperor's arrogant tone came from inside Supreme Taser. Buzz buzz buzz. In the big mouth full of fangs, there was a dark red halo again. Is this guy the type that can't be killed? When the members of the night raid saw such a scene, their faces suddenly became as pale as paper, showing fear and panic. The high-density energy ball could easily tear their bodies apart. Do you think you are big? Staring at the huge body with a sneer, Dustless sneered without hiding, if you think your body is big, you will win, you will only lose faster. Buzz buzz buzz, suddenly, the golden energy rushed out from Dustless's body, rising to an exaggerated height of hundreds of meters, a ferocious outline stood between the sky and the earth. The head held up the sky and the feet stepped on the ground, representing everything in the world. This guy, Is this his true face? Esteth looked numb. She thought that the invincible figure of Supreme Taser was enough to cheat. Who knew that Dustless showed his original appearance in an instant? A samurai wearing a Tengu helmet and heavy armor suddenly appeared out of thin air like a natural disaster. This is Lu. Everyone stared at the golden giant with their mouths agape. The giant was over 100 meters tall and was much taller than Taisei. If one wanted to see the full appearance of this giant, they would have to look up at the starry sky at a 90-degree angle. Damn it, this guy was indeed sent by the heavens to harm the Empire. He can't be allowed to live. The others are just insignificant characters. The Emperor inside Supreme Taser cursed. That exaggerated body was even more terrifying than his Supreme Taser. Supreme Taser's height only reached the waist of the complete Kansusunu. It's over, Dustless murmured inside Kansusunu's complete body. He used his mind to control Kansusunu's movements. Clang 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 clang, the golden greatsword was pulled out of its scabbard. Glaring at Supreme Taser, complete form Kansusunu raised the Tachi of light with both hands, and finally slashed down under Dustless's control. Chapter 1673. Time passed quickly, and only a few days had passed. The outside world was no longer suitable for survival. The eternal light of infinite Tsukuyumi was reflected on the moon, and everything had entered the end. In the system world, Dustless brought all the members of the night raid in. After all, infinite Tsukuyumi had arrived, and all living things had entered the end. It was difficult for Akame and others to survive. I originally thought that you were a true gentleman who wouldn't be tempted, but it turns out that you are a great pervert who is even more absurd than the Emperor. At first, the members of the night raid were shocked by the pavilions in the system, and there were all kinds of beautiful women and all kinds of characters. Demons, humans, gods, angels. There were all kinds of characters, and they were all beautiful. Especially the beautiful figures in the palace, there were countless of them. Cough cough cough, being pointed at his nose by his death, Wuchen couldn't help but blush even though his face was as thick as the city wall. He quibbled, didn't you say it before? If you are strong, you can do whatever you want. Why can't I be willful? Esteth was speechless and found herself speechless. She once said that this was the privilege of the strong. You too, it seems good here. The members of the night raid were embarrassed and looked at Esteth, who was staring at them helplessly. They found that this strange world was good. There were as many powerful people as there were sand in the Ganges. They also had no temper and were very easygoing. Perhaps because they were all women, they also had a sense of belonging to this sunny world. Well, you guys go around and get familiar with this world. We will be a family in the future. Waving his hand, Dustless ordered them to leave. Originally, the next world was supposed to be Demon's Tale or the Legend of Chin's Moon. However, when he started writing, he realized that he had forgotten most of the plot. Thus, the next world would be a Fate series for the time being. Demon's Tale and the Legend of Chin would be left for later. In another direction. I don't need to help you with this time's crossing. Dustless looked at the system consciousness Ling, speechlessly. He always felt that this guy was attacking him in a disguised way. I don't have the ability to tear space now. Crossing other worlds is even more impossible for me. Someone will summon you. Ling didn't say much. She just smiled mysteriously. Then, her body turned into a halo of light and disappeared. Her personality hasn't changed at all. She still likes to keep people in suspense. Dustless shook his head and sat down in boredom. Unexpectedly, before he could rest for a minute, he felt an inexplicable force fall on his head. Caw caw caw. The void exploded with a bang, and a deep black hole appeared above his head. It was deep and gloomy, and on the other side, it was connected to the bottomless universe. What is this? It doesn't look like a spatial tunnel. Dustless frowned. After transmigrating several times, he had gained a new understanding of space tunnels. Although he wasn't too familiar with them, he still had some understanding of them. This bottomless black hole in front of him was clearly not a space tunnel, but rather an inexplicable contract. Is this the thing Ling was talking about? I feel like something is calling out to me. Dustless was at a loss as he felt the pulling force of the black hole. After a final moment of hesitation, he took the initiative and jumped in. He could also hear strange incantations. Master and servant. What the hell is that? Why does it sound so familiar? In the unfamiliar dark space, Dustless thought to himself. Before entering the black hole, he heard strange words like master and servant. Buzz buzz buzz, in the dead silent space, a bright light suddenly swept across. Dustless looked over and carefully felt the special energy fluctuation for a while. After confirming that it wasn't a trap, he finally jumped in without hesitation. How is this possible? The Holy Grail War was only a battle between 7 masters and 7 servants. Why would an 8th master and an 8th servant appear now? This is absolutely impossible. As soon as he arrived in an unfamiliar world, there were shocked voices. At the same time, Dustless also understood where he had arrived. He immediately revealed a knowing smile. Dustless opened his eyes subconsciously, and 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Wei Gong Qixi. This scum is definitely not my master. After glancing at the middle-aged man, Dustless's eyes fell on the 2 female figures next to him. One of them was a white woman, and the other was a blonde girl. Both of them were young, and their appearances were superb. It seems to be King Arthur and Alice Phil. It seems that she is my master. His eyes fell on Alice Phil's head, and Dustless looked at the command incantation in her hand and suddenly realized. Ahem. Miss, I am your servant, and you are my master. Dustless said in a very serious tone. He felt helpless. He didn't understand the so-called incantation at all. And the so-called command incantation seemed to be just for show. It couldn't control Dustless at all. Miss? Listening to Dustless's address, Wei Gong Qixi and Alice Phil were speechless. Aren't hero spirits all ancient people? Since when were ancient people so fashionable? Also, what's with Dustless's clothes? He was wearing casual clothes and sports shoes. The combination was quite reasonable, and he looked very avant-garde. He was even more fashionable than the people in today's society. He didn't look like an ancient person at all. There's something weird about this guy. Saber looked at Dustless strangely. She couldn't tell what was weird about him. Forget it, we have 2 servants here. We have an absolute advantage compared to other masters who are weak. Chapter 1674. Saber was overjoyed, and a blissful smile appeared on her face. Although she did not know how the 8th master and servant appeared, the benefits were definitely greater than the disadvantages. After all, Wei Gong Qixi was Alice Phil's husband, so there was no doubt that Dustless was also an ally in the trenches. This way, their chances of winning would be much higher. After staring at Dustless for a while, Wei Gong Qixi frowned and asked, "That's strange. What, holy relic, did you use to summon this guy?" "You mean the holy relic?" Alice Phil could not help but smile bitterly. Who knew how Dustless appeared? She did not even chant a spell, nor did she prepare a magic circle. However, a command spell appeared in her hand out of nowhere, and Dustless, this mysterious guest, also appeared as a servant. Holy relic, Dustless also had a headache. Looking at Wei Gong Qixi's questioning eyes, he was speechless for a moment. Then, he waved his hand and said impatiently, "A handsome servant does not need a holy relic." Ha! The 3 of them were stunned as they stared at Dustless. This was the first time they encountered such a strange heroic spirit. Is there something wrong with your head? Or did something go wrong during the summoning ritual? Saber complained. She was quite dissatisfied with Dustless. Wasn't he mocking the servant that needed to be summoned? Although I don't know what's going on, one thing is for sure. In this Holy Grail war, our advantage is far greater than our disadvantage. Wei Gong Qixi could not figure it out. There were too many unsolved mysteries in this world. If he could not figure it out, then he could only muddle through. What is your position? Alice Phil blinked and asked curiously. Position? Dustless complained. He was just an intruder who came in halfway. To put it bluntly, he was an illegal immigrant. Where could he find a proper account for himself? Naturally, there was no such thing as a position. Dustless lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then, his eyes lit up and he replied loudly, my job is END. Let's get along harmoniously in the future. End. Saber, Wei Gong Qixi, and Alice Phil looked at each other. This position meant the end of everything. Forget it, there's no need to worry about such trivial matters. The location of the Holy Grail War, this time is Dongmu City. The few of us will rush over tomorrow. But I've only booked 3 tickets at the moment. Wei Gong Qixi revealed an apologetic expression. The 3 of them were himself, Saber, Alice and Phil. Don't worry, I can fly over. Dustless smiled and said politely. Even though he didn't like the man in front of him, he still had to follow basic etiquette. It can fly. Saber, Wei Gong Qixi, and Alice Phil were shocked. A spirit that could fly. Was that still a heroic spirit? He had never heard of heroic spirits being able to fly. There's nothing to be surprised about. Compared to Saber, I can't be more ordinary. With a modest smile on his face, Dustless said calmly. In that case, let's have a good night's rest. We'll rush to Dongmu City tomorrow. On the plane the next day, Wei Gong Qixi, Alice, Phil, and Saber boarded the plane together. Only Dustless set off alone, feeling bored. But before leaving, Wei Gong Qixi asked Dustless to bring along a person, Zhou Meimi. This person was saved by Wei Gong Qixi once when she was young, and they were like childhood friends. Miss Meimi, it's the first time we meet, please take care of me. Dustless elegantly extended his right arm with an imperceptible smile on his face. You, get along well. Seeing Dustless's action, Zhou Meimi was stunned. How is this a heroic spirit? He's no different from a modern person, not like an old-fashioned heroic spirit at all. Let's go. Staring at the plane taking off in the distance, Dustless suddenly reached out and hugged Zhou Meimi. What are you doing? Let go of me. A heroic spirit is so lascivious, you're a weirdo. Zhou Meimi, who was in a trance for a moment, snapped back to reality. Let go. Dustless ignored it when he heard that and retorted with a question, if I let go of you, how can I bring you along to fly together? Don't tell me you want to hug me. In that case, of course, it's fine, but the premise is that you don't think that I'm taking advantage of you. Zhou Meimi was dumbfounded. She was speechless by Dustless's words. She could only be silent and let Dustless hug her snake-like waist. Zhou Meimi's face was slightly red, and then she remembered the task that Wei Gong Qixi gave her and returned to normal. This guy can really fly. Looking down at the sky below, Zhou Meimi's eyes were in a daze. The charming scenery was panoramic. She was a little obsessed for a moment, and her mind was blank. Don't call me, guy, I'm a heroic spirit. You can call my job title END, but compared to the so-called job title, I prefer you to call me by my name, Dustless. Staring at the large passenger plane in front, Dustless explained in a rather bored manner. Dustless. I understand, but you're really a strange heroic spirit," Jiuyu Mamie whispered. Although her voice was very soft, Dustless still heard it clearly. It just so happened that right at this moment, Wu Chen's sudden words caused her expression to go grim. Chapter 1675. Miss Jiuyu Mommy. "Anyway, we still have a long time, let me guess your motive." The bored Dustless smiled and looked at Jiuyu Mommy. He ignored her expression and said to himself, logically speaking, you should have known that the Holy Grail War would be held in Dongmu City, and you should have already booked the tickets. You are Wei Gong Qixie's assistant, and that guy is very smart. It is impossible for him to forget to book the tickets for you. Then, there is only one possibility. Ignoring Jiuyu Mommy's stunned expression, Dustless continued to analyze. If you are with me, it is just to test my ability, right? If you think that I am useless, I guess you will set a trap to lure other servants to kill me, and you and Wei Gong Qixie will ambush the other party's master, right? What a cunning and smart vile man. Dustless explained to himself. His expression was calm, as if what he said was just a small matter. In fact, Dustless hated Wei Gong Qixie very much. He was extremely despicable. Of course, Dustless also belonged to the despicable and shameless type. He was not qualified to criticize others, but there should be a bottom line for everything. For the so-called justice, he used his own wife as bait and let Alice Phil pretend to be Saber's master to lure other masters to kill him. Who else could be so despicable? For the sake of justice, he actually used his own wife as bait. At this moment, Dustless suddenly felt that his head was cold. He turned his head and saw a black pistol aimed at his head. You have such an intense behavior, which means that my previous guess was true. Gently shaking his head, Dustless felt that Jiuyu Mommy and Alice Phil were not worth it. They were sacrificed for that scum Wei Gong Qixie. Who are you? Jiuyu Mommy's eyes were cold, and her tone was unfriendly. Pointing a gun at a heroic spirit. You are playing with fire. Dustless replied indifferently as he looked at the void in front of him. I just want to tell you that if you and Wei Gong Qixie have any unrealistic plans or plans against me, you better give up as soon as possible. We are now allies in the same trench. I am also very interested in the Holy Grail. Moreover, you're just a mere human. Don't you think you're too naive and laughable to scheme against a heroic spirit? Dustless sneered coldly. Don't you dare look down on humans, Takumi Jiuyu snorted in dissatisfaction. Besides, no matter how powerful or special you are, you're still just a human when you're alive. This guy is really ignorant. Dustless could not help but laugh when he heard that. So this guy actually thought that he was dead. However, most heroic spirits were like that. They were all summoned to participate in the Holy Grail War. Not everyone was as cheat-like as Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a series of sonic booms suddenly sounded in front of them. The mysterious object's tail was covered in flames, and it directly blasted towards the flying plane. It didn't matter that Dustless did not recognize it, but Takumi Jiuyu, who was often in contact with firearms, was shocked. She said in panic, "Oh no, that thing is a cruise missile." Cruise missile. Hearing that, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, and then he frowned. This kind of thing was naturally useless against him. Not to mention a cruise missile, even if an atomic bomb came, it would be useless. With Saber's strength, she would probably be fine. However, whether or not Wei Gong Qixie and Alice Phil would be spared was a question mark. Boom boom boom. The speed of the missile was beyond imagination. When Dustless was about to intercept it, the flying plane was attacked by the missile and instantly exploded into a pile of fire. Qixie! Takumi Jiuyu shouted nervously and worriedly. The first thing she was worried about was not Saber and Alice Phil. It was enough to prove that the relationship between the two was extraordinary. I'm fine. Through his perverted vision, Dustless saw that in the explosion of the fire, the three of them were fine. It's normal for Alice Phil to be fine with Saber's protection, but why is Wei Gong Qixi safe and sound? That light, could it be the sheath of the holy sword, Avalon? Dustless thought to himself. He saw that Wei Gong Qixi's body was flowing with holy light. He was not injured, but the passengers on the plane could not escape the nightmare. They were all killed by the cruise missile. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Although their lives were saved, because they were in the sky, the three of them quickly fell down. Wan Xiang Tianing. His left arm erupted with a strong gravitational force, and the three people who fell to the sea were forcibly absorbed by Dustless. Such a convenient ability, not bad. Floating around Dustless, Saber and the other two were relieved. They stared at Dustless nervously, afraid that this guy would be distracted and throw them down. Although I don't know what happened, one thing is certain, it should be the other masters who attacked us. Dustless analyzed seriously and looked at Wei Gong Qixi with a strained expression. He said with difficulty, my gravitational control is average, I can only support 2 people flying. Sigh. It's all my fault for being useless, I'm really sorry. How about this, Wei Gong Qixi, I'll temporarily put you on the Pacific Ocean and leave with Saber and Alice Phil first. You can swim to Dongmu City by yourself, how about that? This guy. Wei Gong Qixi was furious when he heard that. This is the center of the Pacific Ocean, you want me to swim to Japan? This vulgar and low-level joke was simply too bad. Chapter 1676. Swimming from the Pacific Ocean to Japan. Are you out of your mind? Before Kamiya Kazi could refute, Kuyumamiya yelled, that's impossible. No human in this world can swim from the Pacific Ocean to Japan. TSK, I'm just a special case. Although I'm using my flying ability. Dustless smiled and teased, all in all, I can only carry 3 people at most, Saber, Alice, Faye, and you. As for the others. I'm sorry, I can't help. Is that so? Then you can take the 3 of them and leave. Kamiya Kazi sighed and waved his hand, I'll call a ship. When we reach Dongmu City, you must be careful, especially Yen Feng Qili. You must pay attention to him. I suspect that the cruise missile incident was done by that guy. I have a very dangerous feeling. That guy will be the strongest enemy we'll ever meet. No matter what, he's just a human. Dustless pursed his lips. Yen Feng Qili was indeed dangerous when humans fought against humans. However, if he was caught by a hero spirit, he would be nothing more than an ant. Where's the person who attacked us? Saber widened her eyes and wiped her mouth. She carefully looked down at the large number of uninhabited islands in the sea below. She could not find where the person who attacked them was hiding. There are too many scattered islands. Saber smiled apologetically. Although she was a hero spirit, she was not a god. She could not find a person on the ground hundreds of meters away or even 1,000 meters in the air. Leave it to me. Dustless smiled and said, as long as all these islands are sunk, no matter if it's master or servant, they won't be able to escape. Caw caw caw. As soon as he finished speaking, a high-density energy ball appeared in front of Dustless's thumb. As the force was too strong, the surrounding void was distorted and collapsed. Who ordered you to use your noble phantasm? Kamiya Kazi shouted angrily. Noble phantasm. Dustless glanced at Kamiya Kazi and said coldly, if this is a noble phantasm, then I have too many of them. Wang Su's flash. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a flick of his finger, the energy ball shot out towards the scattered islands on the ground. Boom boom boom. The calm sea surface trembled, and waves that were dozens of meters high splashed. then the scattered islands in an extremely simple manner. Golo. Saber couldn't help but be stunned when she saw the exaggerated range of the attack. Even with such a large distance, it was still able to raise an island hundreds of meters away to the ground. The power of the attack was self-evident. No matter what, as long as there are masters and servants on this island, they're all dead meat. Wu Chen's narration was as light as a breeze. It was as if he had done something like eating and drinking water. It was unbelievably calm. Bastard! Wei Gongqi, who regained his senses, was enraged. He glared at Wu Chen. He always felt that this rascal was always going against him. You've sunk all the islands, what about me? Kamiya Kazi's expression was bitter. Dustless's flying ability could only carry 3 people at most. Hence, he had to stay behind. Now that the islands had sunk, how could he accept it? That's your problem, Mr. Master. Dustless smiled innocently. To be honest, he had purposely tricked Kamiya Kazi. Goodbye, Kamiya Kazi. Swim all the way to Dongmu City. With a smile, the gravitational force on Kamiya Kazi disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A black shadow fell straight into the sea. Master, are you sure you're okay? What if the other servants attack you? Saber asked anxiously. She stared at Dustless and then at Alice Phil. It's okay. Since Kamiya Kazi asked us to leave first, he must have other ways to get to Dongmu City. Everyone, please believe in him. Alice Phil did not show much emotion. She smiled and explained, I believe in Kamiya Kazi. He will definitely be able to get through this. Master, your relationship is really deep. I'm envious of you. Dustless made a jealous expression and immediately pointed to the sea below and said, You may not have noticed, but I, with my special ability, happened to see Kamiya Kazi being chased by a group of sharks, Dongmu City. In an obscure and unknown room, 2 middle-aged men were conversing. One of them was dressed like a middle-aged priest, while the other was an elegant man in a red suit, Toshimi Nagasaka. Kiri, have you found the trace of the 8th Einherjar? Toshiomi looked at the man in front of him expectantly. Found it. This is the video of that guy. At that time, my assassin attacked him. Yen Feng Kiri handed the saved video to Toshiomi. Did that guy find assassin? While staring at the video with interest, Toshiomi Inaka asked calmly on the other side. I don't think so. Assassin is good at assassination. The 8th Einherjar did not find him. Yen Feng Kiri said truthfully. Is that so? It seems like he's just an insignificant character. Don't worry. Toshiomi was relieved and labeled Dustless as a cheap guy. That's not right, Toshiomi frowned and asked, since he did not find assassin, how did assassin get killed by someone else? This, Yen Feng Kiri said helplessly, although assassin was not found, that guy seemed to be enraged. He used his noble relic to destroy all the islands. Assassin was also killed instantly. All the islands were sunk by him. Chapter 1677. In other words, he used his noble phantasm to destroy all the islands. It seems to be quite powerful. He seems to be a powerful hero spirit, but he's just an idiot who doesn't use his brain. This was the first time he had heard of such a willful heroic spirit. However, after thinking about it carefully, he understood. Heroic spirits like this were sometimes easier to deal with. An intelligent and powerful figure was the most difficult to deal with. It's good to be impulsive. Then, Toshiomi Inaka smiled in relief and said in a tone that suggested there was nothing to be afraid of, there's no need to worry. There's no need to be afraid of such a powerful young heroic spirit. A poisonous snake that knows how to endure and hide in the dark is the most terrifying. Toshiomi smiled elegantly and poured himself a glass of red wine. He was glad that Dushless was an idiot who did not know when to stop. But, Yen Fengili frowned slightly. Master hasn't had the time to watch the video. That guy's master seems to be Takamiya Cheshire's wife, Alice Phil. Pfft. Hearing that, he spat out the red wine that he had just drunk. His good mood was gone. Toshiomi Enosaka's face was dark, and his hands were sweating. If that was the case, Alice Field would definitely do her best to assist Wei Gong Cheesy in obtaining the Holy Grail. Even if Dustless was an idiot with low IQ, his destructive power was still extremely strong. No matter how bad a heroic spirit's combat power was, it was definitely stronger than a human's. When did they come to Dongmu City? Once they arrive, order your assassin to ambush them immediately. Also, send this video to the other masters through the secret channel. If everyone knows about it, we might work together to deal with them. The assassin that was killed by Dushless was just a clone of assassin. In the evening, Dushless, who was dragging 3 people, finally arrived at Dongmu City. As soon as they arrived at their destination, Takeo Juyu left impatiently. She might have gone to look for Takamiya Cheshire. TSK, Miss Takeo Juyu and Mr. Takamiya are really close. Dustless walked to Alice Phil and deliberately raised his voice to insinuate something. You've, Saber reflexively kicked out, but Dustless dodged in time. However, Saber was Saber after all. She turned around and hugged Dustless tightly. Then, she dragged Dustless a short distance away. Are you trying to sow discord between us? As far as heroic spirits are concerned, this is simply too despicable. Saber, who was holding on to Dustless tightly, scolded loudly, please don't do anything that will tarnish the reputation of the heroic spirits. Everyone will be humiliated if you do that. Cough, 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 before we talk, can you please send me off first? Dustless awkwardly glanced at Saber who was hugging him tightly. He lowered his head and said helplessly, Saber, with all due respect, you don't seem to understand the nature of the Holy Grail War. Dustless, do you think I'm an ignorant little girl? How can I not understand this kind of thing? Saber pouted and complained unhappily. She felt that her intelligence was being insulted by Dustless. The so-called Holy Grail War was actually 7 sorcerers and their heroic spirits fighting against each other. The end result was also quite simple. The winner was King. No, you misunderstood me, Dustless shook his head when he heard that. His eyes shone brightly as he explained, the reason why you joined the Holy Grail War this time should be because of the universal wishing machine, the Holy Grail, right? To be honest, I'm actually here for it as well. However, everyone seems to have gotten one thing wrong. Aren't all the Sarvant and Satyr doing this for the same purpose? Saber nodded affirmatively. No, everyone has made a mistake. The so-called Holy Grail can only fulfill one person's wish, and us candidates, including all the Masters and Sarvant, have a total of 14 people. No, after including myself and Alice Phil, the total number of candidates added up to 16. Dustless raised his voice and said meaningfully, even if you defeat everyone in the end, do you think Wei Gong Keisai will give the Holy Grail to you? This. Keisai will probably give the Holy Grail to me. Saber lowered her head in uncertainty. Who knows what choice Wei Gong Keisai will make in the end? Saber, I can tell you clearly. If you win and defeat all the Masters and Sarvant, then Wei Gong Keisai will probably use the command spell to make you commit suicide. This way, the Holy Grail will be his alone. That guy has an extremely naive dream. He wants to eliminate all evil in this world. This is simply a fool's dream. Such a thing is impossible. Where there are people, there will be conflict. This is fated. Unless that guy wipes out all of humanity, then there will only be justice left in this world. Dustless's tone was filled with a bewitching charm. Every word he said was like a gem to Saber. It was very convincing. After all, these were undeniable facts. In the original work, Inaka Toshimi had actually planned to do so. After the Hero King killed all the heroic spirits, Inaka Toshimi would use the command spell to order Gilgamesh to commit suicide. His method was very sinister. How would you know such a thing? Saber stared at Dustless with a face full of questions. About this, Dustless felt a headache coming on. He couldn't possibly say that he had transmigrated, right? He could only make up a reason to fool Saber. You immature fledglings do not understand the truth. I have participated in 3 Holy Grail wars. No. Including this Holy Grail war, I have participated in 4 Holy Grail wars. In the past, I had helped the masters defeat all their enemies. However, those 3 shameless masters used the command spell to order me to commit suicide. Chapter 1678. Saber was stunned when she heard that. She stared at Dustless and fixed her gaze on him. She could not move anymore. She did not expect Dustless to have such a torturous experience. I don't think Ji-Shi is that kind of person. After hesitating for a while, Saber finally chose to believe Ji-Shi. It's hard to know what's in a person's heart. Most of my previous masters were cunning and despicable anyway, Dustless said nonchalantly. He knew that his plan to trick Saber into betraying him had failed. If it was a Chinibu like Gilgamesh, he might have been able to trick her into betraying Toshimi Nagasaka. No. In the original work, Gilgamesh betrayed Toshimi Nagasaka and joined Yen Feng Chili. However, Saber was different. It was impossible for her to be as unprincipled as Gilgamesh. She deeply believed in the spirit of chivalry and viewed traitors as disgraceful scum. It was unrealistic to think that he would betray Wei Gong Kisi with just a few words. Moreover, even if Saber betrayed Ji-Shi, she did not seem to have a suitable master. At that moment, Dustless suddenly raised his eyebrows. The boredom on his face disappeared and was replaced by excitement. Is there something wrong? Saber asked with a frown. She subconsciously looked at Alice Phil. She and Dustless were both powerful heroic spirits. Naturally, they would not be afraid of other heroic spirits. The only weak one was Alice Phil, who was her master. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. He looked at Alice Phil. As expected, a black shadow was rushing toward them. How despicable. Saber snorted angrily. She quickly swooped down with her sword. His aura is hidden very well. It's almost impossible to catch him. Moreover, this Sarvant is a new face. Could he be assassin who specializes in assassination? He has a lot of doppelgangers. His methods are despicable, but he's smart. He knows that it's not me and Saber, so he's actively looking for weaker prey to attack. Dustless touched his chin. He suddenly thought of a black-bellied priest, Yen Feng Chili. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a few sharp sounds came from behind him. Dustless subconsciously turned his head, and a cold dagger was mercilessly stabbing towards his heart. Shinra Tensei. A powerful repulsive force erupted, and the black shadow that had launched a sneak attack was immediately sent flying. Boom boom boom. The black shadow that was sent flying smashed into the surrounding streets, leaving a long mark on the ground. It seemed to have suffered quite a bit of damage, and there were obvious dents on its body. Is it really assassin? Dustless raised his eyebrows and subconsciously glanced at Saber's opponent, who was also assassin. There seemed to be quite a number of such doppelgangers. Yen Feng Chili. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, and a fierce look flashed across his face. Aiming at the wailing black shadow, a cold light flashed from his fingertip and mercilessly shot over. Void Flash. The colorful energy ball charged up for a moment before it locked onto Assassin and blasted toward her. Boom, boom, boom. The powerful flash swept her away, and the streets on both sides were instantly turned into nothingness by the energy released by Void Flash. At the same time, Saber's battle also came to an end. The result was without a doubt, Saber had completely defeated her opponent. This combination is very troublesome, Master. In a secret room somewhere, Yanfeng, Chili, and Toshiomi Inaka sat together. The battle screen in front of them was the scene of Dustless and Saber's battle. Yeah, both of them are pretty strong. That Saber is the strongest job class, and this strange END is also a pretty strong heroic spirit. Toshiomi Inaka nodded solemnly, and couldn't help but feel annoyed. Originally, he and Yanfeng, Chili, and a strong heroic spirit like Gilgamesh had given them the confidence to win this Holy Grail war. Who would have thought that the 8th heroic spirit would suddenly jump out, Andy Dustless? He had ruined a great victory. Just thinking about it made Toshiomi Inaka feel constipated. Moreover, E&D Dustless and Saber were bound to be an iron alliance. It couldn't be broken up so easily. After all, their masters were husband and wife. We can also join forces with the other masters. An idea flashed through Yan Feng's mind. He leaned close to Toshiomi Inaka's ear and whispered, "Master, we can totally do that. For example, we can join forces with that guy, Despicable and vile people. Leave that kind of bastard to me alone." At that moment, an extremely arrogant and disdainful voice sounded. A golden flash entered Yanfeng, Chili, and Toshiomi Inaka's eyes. Looking at it carefully, this person was completely golden. He wore golden armor and had short golden hair. His expression was unruly, as arrogant as a god looking down on ants. Where are those two bastards? Tell me, and I'll personally eliminate these two eyesores. Gilgamesh said arrogantly, joining forces with the other heroic spirits is an insult to this king. But, let's see the situation first. Toshiomi Inaka was secretly angry, but facing Gilgamesh, he really couldn't bring out any confidence. He could only nod and agree. In fact, he really wanted to say to Gilgamesh, "You are a super big idiot who doesn't care about anyone else." In fact, at this moment, not only Toshiomi Inaka and Yanfeng, but the other masters and servants were also frowning. In the previous Holy Grail War, such a thing had never happened. Two heroic spirits stood on the same side, while the other heroic spirits were all alone. In comparison, they were at a great disadvantage. Chapter 1679. My king. Why don't we observe for a while? Find out how Saber and the male heroic spirit's noble phantasm are moving. Toshiomi Enosaka's expression was respectful as he lowered his head. He was more respectful than seeing his own father. What you say makes sense, you bastard. This one will listen to your arrangements. I hope this gathering won't make this one feel bored and depressed. Gilgamesh's body lost its texture and turned into a golden light that dissipated. The hero king's ability to put on airs is better than fighting. Yanfeng Chili saw the miserable Toshiomi Enosaka and couldn't help but shake his head. Sometimes, it's not necessarily a good thing for a heroic spirit to be too strong. Toshiomi Enosaka was called a bastard, and he couldn't refute it, but he had to be respectful. You can imagine how depressed Toshiomi Enosaka was. At this time, in another direction, more and more assassin doppelgangers came to attack from all directions. It was obvious that they had been deliberately instructed to attack Alice Phil, who was weaker in terms of strength. 90 Black Coffin. The black light that was enough to cut a mountain flashed out of thin air and cut the assassins in front of them. Even so, there were still many splits. There are too many assassins. Saber's hair was slightly messy, and she was panting, looking tired. Their intention is very simple. They want to force us to use our noble phantasm. Dustless was familiar with Yen Fengqili's intention. I'm afraid that we have been targeted by many heroic spirits. Observation hockey spread out, and the scene within a few hundred meters fell into Dustless's eyes. Oh. The final king Gilgamesh, the conqueror king, and Lancer Delimido Odina are secretly watching the changes in the battle. Dustless's mouth curled into an imperceptible smile. In the original work, Lancer might have come out to cause trouble at this time. Now that Dustless and Saber were allies, this unexpected change might make him hesitate to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. For a moment, he hesitated whether to go to war with Dustless and Saber. Whoosh! Several sharp sounds came into his ears. Dustless looked up and saw more than a dozen noble phantasms pouring down. This dazzling light. Is it the king's treasure? Dustless's face showed a nostalgic look. The ability of Gate of Babylon was not limited to Gilgamesh. But it's really a pity that your opponent is me, Dustless said softly as the spiritual pressure in his body surged, binding Path's 81st step, air severing. In an instant, a transparent barrier appeared in front of Dustless. How dare you try to block this king's light with such a fragile object? You're overestimating yourself. The street lamps suddenly turned black as a stream of light materialized. Standing on it was none other than Hero King Gilgamesh. Bastards who are hiding in the surroundings, come out for this king. Gilgamesh's arrogant eyes swept across the surroundings. His voice was like thunder, spreading over a radius of several hundred meters. Who is this arrogant heroic spirit? Since you're so arrogant, do you dare to tell me your name? Lancer, who was holding 2 guns, had no choice but to walk out from the darkness. Who knows? I didn't expect that other than me, there would be someone else who dares to call himself a king. A rough and heroic voice came from the sky. A tall and strong man who was riding 2 mighty bulls also descended from the sky. However, among these 8 heroic spirits, one of them is about to die. How sad. Gilgamesh looked down at Dustless arrogantly. He turned a deaf ear to the barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Bang! 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 The falling treasures all landed on the enchantment. Everyone thought that the enchantment would collapse on the spot, but who would have thought that it was unexpectedly sturdy, and nothing happened at all. On the contrary, Gilgamesh's attacks were all blocked. You're just a so-called king. You don't know your place. Dustless looked at Gilgamesh hopelessly. He couldn't help but find it funny. After all, he was just the king of a narrow land. What did he have to be so arrogant? You bastard! When Gilgamesh heard what was said, his face twisted. His scarlet eyes were filled with anger. Gilgamesh felt that he was being humiliated by Dustless's unscrupulous gaze. Whoosh! 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 Countless ripples appeared in the void behind him. Soon after, a large number of golden weapons appeared. Each of them was dazzling and sharp. They could all be called masterpieces. It was undeniable that Gilgamesh was only interested in the best items. He probably wouldn't even look at trash. This guy, the Conquest King, had a serious expression. He looked at the large amount of light above Gilgamesh's head and couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. At first glance, they were all relics. You can tell where this guy came from. Which era is he a hero from? Conquest King Iskandar asked the skinny young man beside him. Who knows? In short, this guy is very strong. The young man rolled his eyes and said, I asked you to watch the battle, but you insisted on coming out to cause trouble. You even said that you wanted to persuade the other heroic spirits to be your subordinates. Such actions are extremely foolish. The young man was called Weber Velvet, Conquest King Iskandar's master. Although I don't know which era Golden Twinkle came from, there might be a heroic spirit appearing now. Lancer looked at the gorgeous light with a serious expression. he didn't dare to be careless. At the same time, his gaze locked onto Dustless was filled with pity. Be careful, Dustless. Saber also noticed the abnormality here. She quickly rushed over to provide support, but she was forcefully stopped by Assassin. Both parties were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Seems like I have been underestimated. Dustless touched his nose in amusement. Without giving Gilgamesh a chance to attack, he turned into a flash and appeared behind him. The light was fleeting, and no one noticed it. They only saw Dustless suddenly vanishing. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Hero King. Chapter 1680. With the speed of light reaching nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, even if a god came, wanting to see Dustless's trajectory clearly was no different from a dream, much less a mere heroic spirit. Who dares to sneak an attack on this king? Upon hearing this contemptuous voice, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately turned his head. However, what struck him in return was a destructive beam of light. It was so blinding that Gilgamesh's eyes were nearly blinded. He hurriedly closed his eyes. Lightspeed kick. Hero King Gilgamesh suddenly felt an excruciating pain in his face, as though his bones were about to break. He was instantly sent flying. This merciless kick had sent Gilgamesh vanishing without a trace. Bam! The land hundreds of meters away suddenly trembled. Only then did everyone see the miserable Gilgamesh lying on the ground half dead. He only had a weak aura left, but he was barely able to survive. He's so fast. I didn't even see how he appeared behind that golden shimmering body. Web Velvet looked as though he had seen a ghost. Idiot. Even I didn't see it, much less a dabbler like you. Conquest King Iskandar punched Web in the head in a bad mood. His expression was somewhat gloomy. Everyone believed that Dustless was about to be finished off, but who knew that this fellow's tiny universe would erupt, instantly crushing the golden shimmering body. Is that the power of a treasure artifact? Lancer was similarly dumbfounded. He suddenly felt thankful that his enemy was not Dustless, or his outcome would definitely be no different from Gilgamesh's. Furthermore, it wasn't only the Conquest King. In fact, even Lancer did not see how Dustless moved. Bastard, 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 Hero King Gilgamesh touched his cheek. In his rage, he hammered the ground angrily. His right hand was a bloody mess, but he did not feel any pain. Caw 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 caw. Hero King Gilgamesh's heart shattered into sand, forever unable to heal. As he touched his face, a gigantic footprint was imprinted on his face like a birthmark. This was all thanks to Dustless. Wow, you have become a lot more handsome. After carefully scrutinizing Hero King Gilgamesh, Dustless gave him a thumbs up and continued striking him. As expected of a king. That handsome face of yours is definitely unparalleled. Dustless's words attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked at Hero King Gilgamesh's face in unison as they roared with laughter. Ha ha ha. What's up with that guy? There's actually a shoe print on his face. Coupled with his sullen expression, it's just too exciting. Iskandar the Conquest King laughed so hard that his eyes were watering and his stomach was hurting. It's indeed comical. Lancer wore an odd expression as he stared at the footprint on Hero King Gilgamesh's face. Ha ha ha, well done. It's best if this hateful Hero King is beaten up by others. Ha ha ha, Toshiomi and Osaka, who was in the same room as Yen Fong Kiri, also saw this scene through a special screen. When he saw the clear shoe print on Hero King Gilgamesh's face, he felt abnormally refreshed. He even specially opened a bottle of champagne. Darn Hero King. It's good that he's taught a lesson like this. It saves him the trouble of putting on that disgusting face of his all day. This guy doesn't have any awareness of being a servant. It's as though I owe him everything. Tashiomi and Osaka took a sip of his red wine and smiled elegantly. There was nothing wrong with Gilgamesh suffering a setback. It allowed him to face the strength of other heroic spirits. It would save him the trouble of calling himself a bastard every time he opened his mouth. That heroic spirit sure is ridiculously strong. He was able to send Hero King Gilgamesh flying with a kick. He must have been an important figure when he was alive. That punk Kamiya Kaseki sure is lucky. It's fine if he has Saber helping him, but now, he has such a powerful heroic spirit. He's like a tiger that has grown wings. Yen Fong-kiri looked nervous and was not as happy as Tashiomi and Osaka. In a short period of time, his assassin army was nearly wiped out. Let's join forces with the other masters. That way, our chances of victory will be greater. Tashiomi and Osaka was secretly delighted for a moment before regaining his composure. After all, Hero King Gilgamesh was his servant. It was fine to be happy for him, but he could not kick him while he was down. After all, they still had to work together to deal with the other masters. Is that all you've got? You can call yourself a king with such half-baked standards? I think I can become a god. Squinting his eyes, Dustless teased with a faint smile, tsk. That face of yours is so domineering no matter how I look at it. Bastard, don't get carried away. Hero King Gilgamesh stared at Dustless with a ferocious expression. A beam of light that was hundreds of meters long appeared in the void. At least a few thousand treasures flew out from it. This punk will use, parting sword EA, sooner or later after being provoked by me. Dustless stroked his chin. He was also the owner of the king's treasure, so he naturally understood Gilgamesh's ability. So. Cold beams shot over like torrential rain. Thousands of weapons launched their attacks at the same time. The scene was extremely spectacular. Conquest King Iskandar and Lancer quickly retreated, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. How can such attacks be effective against me? There's no need to even dodge, much less defend against them. Dustless shook his head and simply stood in place without moving. Pucci. His body was constantly being shattered by the sword beams, but Dustless did not fall to the ground. He did not even bleed or suffer from the most basic injuries. This scene dealt a heavy blow to Hero King Gilgamesh. The enemy was right in front of you, but you did not have the ability to hurt him. Instead, you were being humiliated and ridiculed by your opponent. Was there anything more tragic than this in the world? Hero King Gilgamesh hated Dustless to the core. This rascal had looked down on him for no reason. Now, he had even used sorcery to ignore his attacks. He felt extremely aggrieved. Gilgamesh felt terrible and was about to explode. Chapter 1681. Gilgamesh's face was contorted. It was no wonder he was so furious. He had an extremely conceited temper to begin with. He could not tolerate sand in his eyes. For an ordinary person to look at him directly was the greatest insult to Gilgamesh. Now that Dustless had taught him a lesson, Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. Shoo! No matter how he attacked, he was unable to harm Dustless. That calm face was silently mocking Gilgamesh's powerlessness and frailty. I'll stand here and let you hit me. The key is, can you hit me? You have completely infuriated me, bastard. Gilgamesh's face was even more contorted. His scarlet eyeballs protruded outwards as though they could fall out at any moment. He was really about to go berserk. I've never liked to cause trouble, but, Dustless's eyelids lifted slightly as he revealed a cold look. If you insist on courting death, if I don't teach you a lesson, I'll be looking down on you, the Hero King. With just you. This king shall tell you. Before Gilgamesh could finish his words, tragedy struck. Yomi no Miyazaka. Dustless's forehead revealed a scarlet Samsara Sharingan as he appeared behind Gilgamesh without any warning. He delivered another merciless kick. Lightspeed kick. Boom. 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 Gilgamesh's body exploded with flames once again as he was engulfed by the flames. His beautiful golden armor was covered in dust as he was sent retreating by Dustless's kick. He was in a sorry state. Shoo! 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 At this moment, a sharp beam suddenly came from behind and was about to pierce through Dustless's head. Clang! 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 At the critical moment, a black figure blocked the sneak attack with a sword. Like a shield, she defended Dustless's back. The cold beam was also intercepted by Saber. You should thank me, Dustless. The person who came to his rescue was Dustless's ally, Saber. Thank you. Saber, do you think I'll be finished off by a scoundrel? Dustless turned his head slightly and glanced at the person who was fighting with Saber. It was Lancer. I don't think you're the kind of person who would ambush someone. Is this Master's command curse? Dustless lowered his head and fell silent as he stared at Lancer, who was drenched in cold sweat and had a pained expression. Then. I have no choice but to destroy you. Dustless, who had kicked Gilgamesh away, suddenly looked at Lancer's head. His eyes turned cold, and the tip of his thumb was already glowing with a destructive light. This guy is my opponent. Seeing that Dustless was about to intervene, Saber hurriedly shouted to stop him. She exerted force in her arms and instantly forced Lancer to retreat. Then, Saber chased after Lancer and launched a fierce attack. She looks like a woman on the outside, but she's a powerful lion on the inside. Lancer looked at Saber in shock. That powerful force had numbed his arm. You should be able to kill me quickly if you join forces with that guy. Why did you let go of such a good opportunity? Lancer expressed his confusion. He knew Dustless's strength. If he joined forces with Saber, it would only be a matter of time before they defeated him. But even if the two of you joined forces, I could still hold on for a while. Lancer added arrogantly. No, you misunderstood me. Saber shook her head and said softly, if Dustless and I joined forces, it would go against the spirit of the Night's Way. If the two of us really joined forces, you wouldn't be able to resist. That guy could even kill you alone. Don't you see? Dustless has been teasing that gold sparkle. Lancer fell silent and looked at the miserable Gilgamesh. This guy was simply the synonym of tragedy. After being beaten and humiliated by Dustless, he lost all his dignity as a heroic spirit. I'm going to kill you. Gilgamesh roared, and the void was filled with countless sword shadows again. The golden vortex kept flashing and sharp swords shot out, all aimed at Dustless's head. It was enough to see the hatred this petty hero king had for Dustless. What a problematic child. Looking at Gilgamesh, whose face was filled with murderous intent, Dustless let out a long sigh. This guy's strength was second to none, but his tolerance was really unflattering. Then. I'll give you an eye for an eye. With a teasing look on his face, Dustless waved his hand, and the sky behind him also flashed with a large halo. The dazzling light made Gilgamesh's mind go into a trance. He carefully experienced the nature of the power. After a while, Gilgamesh opened his mouth wide. His exaggerated appearance was enough to fit an adult's fist. This kind of energy fluctuation is definitely not wrong. How does this bastard know my ability? Gilgamesh glared angrily, and his teeth were about to shatter. What's the situation with this Holy Grail war? Who is that guy? He even knows how to use the Hero King's ability. Then what use do I have for Gilgamesh? Damn it. Is the Holy Grail going to be given up to that punk, Takamiya Kisi? Not only was Gilgamesh, who was in the middle of a battle, so shocked that his jaw nearly dislocated, even his master, Enosaka Tashimi, was staring at Dustless in shock. Golden light dotted the top of his head, and countless divine weapons slowly poked their heads out. The range was even greater than Gilgamesh's. Imposter, you imposter. Gilgamesh had completely forgotten his appearance as a heroic spirit. He was like a shrew pointing at Dustless, who was using the Gate of Babylon and cursing. His eyes were about to crack, and he was about to suffer from internal injuries. Chapter 1682. The veins on Gilgamesh's forehead were bulging. He looked as ferocious as an evil spirit. He felt that his dignity and soul had been trampled on by the despicable guy in front of him. Shoot him through. Gilgamesh, who could not take it anymore, took the lead to attack. Divine weapons fell from the sky like a storm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dustless did not show any weakness. He immediately launched a deadly counterattack. The lights that decorated his head were also shot out mercilessly. Clang, 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 clang. Sparks flew everywhere. There were traces of broken steel everywhere. The divine weapons that were shot out by both parties were damaged. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of relics were shot out consecutively, dazzling everyone. Even Saber and Lancer, as well as the Conqueror King Iskandar, were dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold. All of them were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Why do these two perverts have so many relics? Is God blind? It's not fair. The hero's spirits were cursing in their hearts. It was infuriating to compare oneself to others. Damn it, compared to Dustless, Gilgamesh was so angry that he was about to jump up. As the ancient king, the hero king, he was an extremely conceited person. Now that he had been humiliated by Dustless, he was infuriated. Bastard, since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. The blood-red eyeball shot out a violent aura. A huge light appeared on Gilgamesh's right hand. A strange-looking sword vaguely appeared. Oh no, Gilgamesh is infuriated. In the sealed secret chamber, Yen Feng Kaylee and Toshiomi Inaka saw the scene and were shocked. The two of them only hoped that Gilgamesh could test Dustless's strength. It would be best if he could force him to use his relic. Who would have thought that Gilgamesh would be the first to lose his cool? As the master, Toshiomi Inaka was naturally unwilling to be the first to release his relic. This idiot Gilgamesh is infuriated. It's impossible to persuade him to come back. Toshiomi Inaka looked at the Crimson Command incantation in his hand and was frustrated. The only way was to activate the command spell to make Gilgamesh retreat. Otherwise, this idiot would definitely fight to the death with Dustless. Even if Gilgamesh took out his noble artifact, it might not be his doing. Staring at Dustless, Yen Feng Chili revealed a confused expression. He still hadn't figured out Dustless's background. What's the reason, Kiri? Toshiomi Enosaka asked calmly. This guy seems to have the same ability as Gilgamesh. If that's the case, the eighth hero spirit is too terrifying. Yen Fengili said in a low voice. Are you saying? Toshiomi's expression changed. He understood what Yen Feng Chili was trying to say. He said uncertainly, that shouldn't be possible. Gilgamesh's EA shouldn't be able to use the eighth hero spirit, this. To be honest, I think there's a need to reevaluate the eighth hero's strength. Yen Feng Chili glanced at Toshiomi Enosaka when he heard this. Then, he stared at the surveillance screen and analyzed, the eighth hero's spirit seems to be more familiar with using the king's treasure than Gilgamesh. It's really hard to guess who the imposter is, Master. Who knows, it might be Gilgamesh imitating someone else. In short, let's get the Hero King to retreat. If this continues, I believe he will be defeated. Toshiomi Enosaka sighed in disappointment. He did not hesitate to activate the command spell to order Gilgamesh to retreat. Aya. Is the stray dog retreating? Dustless looked at Gilgamesh, who was suffused with a golden glow. He knew that Toshiomi Enosaka had ordered Golden Shimmer to retreat. If not, with the Hero King's personality, he would definitely fight to the death. Humph. Let's end it here. In the future, just you wait. I will definitely not let you off so easily. Gilgamesh warned fiercely. His flushed face finally recovered a little. On a closer look, Gilgamesh's body was black all over. His armor was covered in black smoke. The funniest thing was that Gilgamesh's hair had also disappeared. He had become a bona fide bald head, all thanks to Dustless. Darn Toshiomi Enosaka. You want to use a laughable title like Your Majesty to appease my anger. Do you think this king is a 3-year-old child? Hero King Gilgamesh was secretly enraged. He vented all his anger on Toshiomi Enosaka. He had appeared to establish his might, but who knew that he would become a stepping stone for Dustless to rise to fame? Then, what do you plan on doing? Conquest King. Gilgamesh fled in a sorry state, leaving behind Hero King Iskandar and his master, Wilbur Velvet. Seeing Dustless look at him, the punk's face was as white as a sheet of paper. Seriously, it looks like my plan of roping you in as my subordinates has failed. Conquest King Iskandar's coarse face revealed a look of regret. How could such an extraordinary expert lower his head to be his lackey? Farewell. By the way, I'm determined to obtain the Holy Grail. The Conquest King rode the divine might wheel and left. Dustless did not plan on pursuing him. This time, they were just getting to know each other. The next time they met, it would be a merciless fight to the death. After all, there was only one Holy Grail. He had to eliminate all them satyr and their heroic spirits. Why am I the only one left after all this fighting? Lancer, who was in an intense battle with Saber, cursed. He was certain that if Saber and Dustless joined forces, he would definitely be torn to pieces. Chapter 1683. Lancer wanted to cry but had no tears. In his heart, he cursed the Hero King Gilgamesh and the Conqueror King Iskandar who ran away. These two bastards were shameless. Seeing that the opponent was strong, they turned around and retreated. Was this what a hero would do? Especially to the Hero King Gilgamesh who was beaten up like a dog. There's a flaw. Boom, boom, boom. Saber seemed to have noticed the ripples in Lancer's heart. She held the sword with both hands and increased her strength by several levels. She launched a fierce and powerful attack, suppressing Lancer and making it difficult for him to fight back. Damn it! Lancer, who was being beaten back, cursed. He did not expect Saber to have such a sharp eye. Even in such a short moment, she realized that his heart was in a mess. Clang, 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 clang. The loud roars continued, and the volcanoes created by the collision of the weapons kept flashing. Lancer was sweating profusely. A moment of mistake would cause him to be suppressed. Bang! The invisible sword coming at him was even more powerful. Saber became braver and braver as she fought. Her attack forced Lancer to retreat. His body even smashed into the wall, leaving a broken dent. Lancer's mouth was also bleeding. Saber, you're too despicable. Lancer, who was not convinced, showed an angry expression. He pointed at Dustless who was standing and shouted, "What's the point of fighting 2 against 1? 2 against 1. Dustless heard him and showed an amused expression. He despised him and said, "Is there something wrong with your eyes?" When did I sneak attack you? And do you think you can survive 2 against 1? Lancer opened his mouth wide and realized that he was speechless. It made sense. Dustless did not intervene in the battle from the beginning to the end. He only watched the battle as if nothing had happened and did not intervene. I'm not convinced. Lancer was too lazy to talk nonsense. It was good that Dustless did not intervene, but the psychological pressure he caused could not be ignored. When you were fighting with others, could you still concentrate with an enemy standing behind you? That's it for today. Your head will be taken by me in the future. Saber held the holy sword with both hands. Her gaze was like a torch that made people look at her differently. Ao, 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 ao. At the same time, a raging roar suddenly came. The 3 of them were startled and rushed towards the source of the roar. Their gazes froze. Is this a berserker? Looking at the pitch-black monster, everyone frowned. That extremely oppressive aura was suffocating. Its aura was extremely evil, and it was as terrifying as a demonic hand that had walked out from hell. Saber, be careful. That guy is coming for you. Dustless stood in front of Saber and reminded her. Coming for me. Saber was stunned. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. There seemed to be no hatred between the heroic spirits. I can only see heroic spirits without hatred, but... Dustless's eyes glowed with wisdom. What if this guy is someone you once knew? Saber was confused by Berserker's words. She stared at the furious Berserker as if she was trying to find someone who matched him in her memory. Ao, 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 ao. King Arthur, Berserker finally let out a series of angry roars. It was very hoarse. His entire body was covered in armor. That voice came from within the armor. No one would doubt that he was a demon disguised as a human. Ao, ao, ao. There was another series of inhuman roars. Then, Berserker suddenly broke the street lamp and dived towards Dustless and Saber. To be more precise, it was Saber. As for Dustless, he was completely ignored by this guy. Bang bang bang. Berserker's strength was extremely terrifying. Every step he took left a dent in the ground. He rushed in a straight line, leaving a dent in the ground. You're just a vicious dog. You're too arrogant. The demonic voice rang in Berserker's ears. This voice sounded harmless, but it made everyone's hair stand on end. Even the 2 masters who were hiding in the dark, Kenneth Elmoroy and Jiantong Yayan, felt a chill in their hearts. It was as if an invisible knife was placed on their necks. Woo woo, even Berserker's body stopped. He hummed twice, as if he was telling Dustless not to meddle in other people's business. Immortal spell, however, his protest was completely ignored by Dustless. He only glanced at him coldly. The chakra in his body surged wildly, and a special red halo appeared between his eyebrows. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the same time, there was an extremely coordinated movement from the depths of the void. Immortal spell, Bright God Gate. Groups of black dots, like a natural disaster, filled everyone's eyes in an instant. This exaggerated formation made people involuntarily think of a natural disaster. What is this? A piece of wood. Lancer looked up at the sky. After seeing what was falling, he immediately took the initiative to distance himself, avoiding close contact with this thing. He had a feeling that a disaster was about to befall him. Damn it, Berserker, this bastard actually didn't listen to my orders. Who told him to provoke that big shot? Jiantong Yayan, who was hiding in the dark, cursed. He did not order Berserker to attack Saber and Dustless. Who knew that this guy would take the initiative to come out and cause trouble? Now, he had angered the 8th heroic spirit. Chapter 1684. Jiantong Yayan regretted his decision. If he had known, he would not have brought Berserker, that idiot. It would have been fine if he had just pulled some aggro, but this time, he had pulled in two extremely powerful heroic spirits, Saber and Dustless. Jiantong Yayan had been watching the battle. He had seen Dustless and Saber's performance. Without any exaggeration, they could be considered the strongest heroic spirit duo. When they were alone, their combat power was invincible. Now that they were in a powerful duo, their strength was on another level. This idiot really doesn't know anything. I wanted him to cause trouble for Toshimi Nagasaka, but this guy, Jiantong Yayan, wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Countless crows descended in his heart. He cursed Berserker's 18 generations of ancestors. This guy's ability to attract aggro was definitely top-notch. We have no chance of winning. Let's just retreat. Jiantong Yayan glanced at the falling bright god gate. Jiantong Yayan looked at it with lingering fear, and then he dragged his exhausted body and retreated. Jiantong Yayan was not a scumbag. He was only able to become a master because of his father. Boom boom boom. The sky full of redwood fell. Berserker extended his speed to the limit, but the area covered by the bright god gate was too wide. There was no way to escape. He was instantly crushed. Boom 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 boom. Caw 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 caw. A sea of redwood fell on Berserker's body. His sturdy armor was all smashed, and his entire body was exposed to the air. This is a good chance. Saber's beautiful eyes flashed with passion. When she saw Berserker's armor crumble, she swung Excalibur in her hand. She was about to shatter the heavy armor on Berserker's face. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, good things did not last long. Just as the mask was about to shatter, Berserker's body suddenly turned into mist. He turned into a terrifying black shadow and slowly disappeared. Don't even think about escaping. Saber saw this and groaned. Just as she was about to chase, Dustless stopped her. It's useless, Saber. This guy's master ordered us to retreat. We can't catch him. Grabbing Saber's shoulder, Dustless smiled and said, and this guy's enemy isn't just us. The one who should be having a headache is Toshimi Inaka. You. Saber turned her head and looked straight into Dustless's eyes. Her beautiful face was filled with hesitation as she asked in confusion, sometimes, I wonder if you are really a heroic spirit. That's not important. In short, I'm a heroic spirit and your ally. Dustless scratched his head and answered nonchalantly. His actions and the knowledge he had accumulated far surpassed that of the so-called heroic spirits. Let's retreat, Alice. Phil is scared to death. Looking at the dazed Alice Phil not far away, Dustless slowly walked over. She was quite shocked by the bright god gate that filled the entire street. In terms of scale, it was simply too shocking. At this moment, in another direction. Such a large-scale attack, this should be his true treasured artifact. Toshimi Inaka and Yen Fong Kaylee were in a daze as they observed the red forest through a special camera. The boundless numbers made their hands cramp as they were unable to determine the exact number. In a flash, it was the next morning. Yesterday's battle had left a shadow in the hearts of many heroic spirits and satyr, especially hero King Gilgamesh. He did not sleep the entire night as his mind was filled with Dustless's arrogant figure. There was nothing he could do about it. His domineering face had Dustless's footprints on it. It could only be said that it was an unlucky year. In the castle of the Ainsbaron family in Dongmu City, Takamiya Kisi and Takeo Kuyu had also rushed back from the distant Pacific Ocean. The former's face was filled with fatigue and his eyes were empty. In the vast Pacific Ocean, Takamiya Kisi had been chased by groups of sharks for several hours. Not bad, your performance was very good. In Takemiya Kissy's bedroom, after hearing about yesterday's battle, his listless and dispirited spirit was finally lifted. He revealed a rare smile, but it looked forced. It's just a pity that we didn't get rid of one of them. If Kissy was around, he would definitely be able to assassinate the enemy's master instead of flaunting his prowess and offending all the heroic spirits. Takeo Kuyu stared coldly at Dustless. She did not hide her dissatisfaction. This bastard had left her lover in the sea to be chased by sharks. Takemiya Kissy had been cheated badly. Msader, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Dustless is not wrong. There is no need for us to assassinate the enemy in such a despicable manner. With Dustless's and my abilities, we can completely wipe out the enemy's servant. It did not matter if Dustless was silent, but Saber immediately stood up to argue. She believed in the spirit of chivalry and scoffed at Takemiya Kissy's despicable methods. She despised them and even looked down on them. Saber is quite righteous. He stared at the righteous Saber with interest. He did not expect her to defend him like this. As for Takeo Kuyu, Dustless glanced at her and laughed disdainfully in his heart. When I bring Alice and Phil to catch the adulterers, I hope you can still cooperate with each other like this. Boom boom boom. At the same time, a violent tremor resounded through the sky. A low and dirty sound suddenly resounded through the entire castle of the Einsbaron family. Chapter 1685. Jeanne d'Arc, my Jeanne d'Arc, come out and see me, I am Gilles Deleuze. After hundreds of years, we finally meet. A heart-wrenching voice resounded through the sky. Looking through the window, they saw a hideous, strangely dressed, devil-like figure appeared outside the castle of the Ahrensburg family. Is this guy Castor? Saber unexpectedly frowned. She didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. He even dared to take the initiative to attack them. His behavior was not stupid but arrogant. After all, there were two heroes here, Dustless and Saber, but Castor was alone. It seems that he is alone, and he can't wait to die. Wei Gong Kisi looked contemplative, then his gray-brown eyes swept around, staring at the large forest in front of him. He seemed to be looking for Castor's accomplice. No, it's a miracle that this guy can come to us now. I thought he would come to us last night. Dustless smiled meaningfully. Castor is a serious infatuated seed. His obsession with love is admirable, but this time, it's a pity that he is confessing his love to the wrong person. By the way, who is Jeanne d'Arc? We don't have such a person here. Wei Gong Kisi asked inexplicably. He instinctively smelled a conspiracy. Maybe someone else is framing us, trying to use us to fight Castor. That's a reasonable analysis. Wei Gong Kisi's lover Q Mamie nodded. The relationship between these two guys is too good. If I kill Wei Gong Kisi, I'm afraid Q Mamie will turn herself into a suicide bomber to kill me. Dustless glanced at the two people who were intimate. He muttered to himself, turning a deaf ear to their conversation. What he did not know was that through the gap of the door, a bright gaze was quietly staring at Wei Gong Kisi. She observed this scene with mixed feelings and disappointment. Her beloved husband was whispering to another woman. As his wife, how could Alice Phil be at ease? The Joan of Arc that guy was talking about. It's funny, but it's actually Saber. Dustless suddenly revealed an answer that made Wei Gong Kisi and Juyu Mommy flabbergasted. Do you think we're idiots? Kuyu Mimi stared at Dustless indignantly. She felt that Dustless was just fooling them. It was ridiculous to say that he had mistaken her for someone else. If it wasn't Dustless talking nonsense, then it was Castor's brain twitching. Joan of Arc, my Joan of Arc, you finally came out to see me. However, the next sentence that Gilles de Rice said made Wei Gong Kisi and Kuyu Mimi furious. Gilles de Rice looked at Saber, who suddenly appeared with an excited and surprised expression as he shouted loudly, Jeanne d'Arc, my Jeanne d'Arc. Who would have thought that after so many years, we would have the opportunity to meet again, my Joan of Arc? Gilles de Les exclaimed excitedly. He almost stood up and began to dance. His eyeballs bulged outward as if they might fall out at any moment. That Castor is an idiot. Mommy stared at Gilles de Les speechlessly. That guy was obviously out of his mind. Saber was King Arthur. She had nothing to do with Joan of Arc. The time difference between the two sides was thousands of years. It's a miracle that he can suppress himself until now. Dustless added again, however, this old guy's ability to rush to his death is really perfect. He knows that when the heroic spirits meet, it will be the end of life and death, but he still dares to take the initiative to come here. TSK, it's really hard to guess the thoughts of the infatuated man. Castor doesn't seem to be pretending. He seems to really think that Saber is Joan of Arc. Could it be that they look exactly the same? Wei Gong Qixi secretly guessed. He stared at Castor and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Suddenly, there was a flash of light in his mind. He seemed to have thought of something, and he showed an excited expression. This guy wouldn't want Saber to fool that super pervert who likes to kill people, right? Catching Wei Gong Qixi's strange expression, Dustless muttered with some uncertainty. With Wei Gong Qixi's character, he could really do such a crazy thing. In order to get the Holy Grail, sacrificing a heroic spirit, Wei Gong Qixi didn't think that it was not worthwhile. The so-called heroic spirit was actually like a chess piece. Mommy, come with me to see it. Wei Gong Qixi pulled Mommy and couldn't wait to rush to the scene. Seeing the brilliance in his eyes, Dustless guessed that this kid had thought of a sinister idea. Alice Phil, don't you want to see it? In the quiet corridor, Dustless stopped in front of the door of Alice Phil's bedroom. He leaned against the wall and sighed, this is inevitable. With your identity, you are destined to not live with Wei Gong Qixi forever. It's normal to have an affair. Even one day, Wei Gong Qixi will kill you personally to fulfill his wish. However, you are my master, I naturally won't let you get hurt. You can rest assured. This is my fate. From the moment I was born, it was destined. Looking at the beautiful scenery outside the window, Alice Phil's face showed a sad smile. As the vessel of the Holy Grail, her final fate was actually destined early on. No matter who the Holy Grail fell on, Alice Phil would inevitably die. Even if Wei Gong Qixi was the final winner, he would not let Alice Phil go. Don't be so pessimistic. There is a phrase called, man can conquer nature. If you want, I can help you change your cruel fate and get rid of the shackles of the Ahrensburg family. Dustless yawned tiredly. He looked lazy, but his tone was firm. Chapter 1686. Castor, please don't confuse people here, I am not the Joan of Arc you are talking about. Saber looked at Castor's crazy eyes, her nose wrinkled, she was disgusted. No, you are Joan of Arc. Castor shook his head stubbornly and said, Joan of Arc, have you forgotten me? I am Gilles Le Sceau. Have you forgotten me? Sorry, I don't know you. After searching her memory again, Saber was sure that she didn't know the inexplicable pervert in front of her. Damn it, damn it, damn it. My Joan of Arc doesn't recognize me. Hearing that, Castor was furious, he picked up the child he had caught before and crushed his head to vent his anger. Damn you, God. Is this all you're doing? Castor was furious, his face was extremely distorted, he threw the child's body on the ground and smashed it into a bloody foam to vent his anger, and he kept cursing the god with vicious words. You're such a crazy guy, Saber was stunned. She didn't expect that Castor would be so cruel. His actions could be described as the actions of a beast. Any normal hero wouldn't do such a thing to a child. Everyone had dignity and bottom line. Castor's cruel means were so vicious and vicious. If you continue to participate in the Holy Grail War, all the heroes will be insulted by you, so, please disappear, Castor. Saber's face turned cold as she rushed toward Castor with Excalibur in her hand, and the sword swept toward Castor's cheek. It's not that easy to kill me. When Castor saw that, he suddenly jumped back a few meters away. His crazy face showed a nostalgic smile, but it still looked so gloomy and terrible, even more frightening than his twisted face just now. If a demon who killed people like Scything Flax smiled at you like the sun, wouldn't you feel disgusted? Even Saber couldn't help but have goosebumps. Evil and crooked path, go, stop, Saber. At this moment, a stern voice stopped Saber's actions. Turning around, it was Wei Gong Kisi and Joyu Wumi who had rushed over, covered in dust. Master, do you have any questions? Saber looked at the smiling Takashi. She suddenly had a bad premonition. She had to remind him, Master, this guy is an evil demon, even children are not spared, we must get rid of him. After that, Saber stared at Castor again. Looking at his excited face, she knew that he was not a good person. Especially the way he stared at her, it made Saber even more disgusted. Saber, let me deal with this matter. However, Wei Gong Keisai didn't care about Saber's opinion. After all, she was just a heroic spirit. As for the child's corpse on the ground, although Wei Gong Keisai was sad, it was only for a short moment. Sacrifices were being made every day in this world. Only by obtaining the Holy Grail, the universal wishing machine, would all the disasters disappear. Castor, to be honest, this girl is your Joan of Arc. Pointing at Saber, Wei Gong Kisi's words made Castor happy, but Saber stared blankly at Wei Gong Kisi. She suddenly understood Wei Gong Kisi's plan. Master, please stop before you go too far. I can understand your eagerness to get the Holy Grail, but I can't accept such a despicable method. Saber was full of anger and said seriously, I am not Joan of Arc, my real name is Artoria Pendragon, King Arthur of ancient Britain. It doesn't matter, Saber. Takeo came to Saber's side and whispered, Saber, this is all for the Holy Grail, you also want to get it to fulfill your wish, right? So the necessary allies are indispensable. But if I cooperate with Dustless, we can defeat the other servant. Saber argued, she despised Takashi's despicable method. Not to mention pretending to be Joan of Arc, Saber couldn't help but vomit when she thought of Castor's disgusting face. We have two heroes on our side, but we have an absolute advantage, but you seem to have forgotten one thing, what if the other heroes also learn from us and form an alliance? And we just got the information that Toshiomi and Osaka and Iskandar the Conqueror have come together. The same is true for several other heroes, most of them have signs of forming an alliance with each other. In order to win the final victory, it's okay to use a despicable method, but, a voice full of disdain fell into Takeo and Saber's ears. Dustless was extremely annoyed, using your wife as a bait to attract the enemy, this method is disgusting. This is all for justice. Takeo loudly refuted. Bullshit justice. Pursing his lips, Wuchen ridiculed even more. His words made Joyu Wumi's face turn red. If it weren't for the difference in strength, she would have beaten Wuchen up to vent her anger. Using Alice Phil as a bait. Saber looked at him blankly, she didn't know what Dustless was talking about. So you still don't know? Glancing at Saber who didn't know anything, Dustless decisively revealed Takashi's background and said, the reason why Takashi let the three of us act alone is actually to attract the other masters to assassinate us. He and Takeo hid in the dark to snipe the other masters, but this guy's plan was destroyed by me. I threw him into the Pacific Ocean to compete with sharks in swimming. Chapter 1687. How could he be so despicable? Saber was furious. It was fine if he was despicable to the enemy, but he was so shameless to his own people. Saber couldn't stand it anymore, especially when he intended to use his wife as bait. How could there be such a despicable person in this world? Master, I will never acknowledge your twisted justice. Saber stared at Wei Gong Kisi's back. This guy was simply shameless. You bastard, are you trying to drive a wedge between us? Jiuyu Wumi grabbed Wu Chen's collar. When she was about to scold him, she suddenly felt that she was being stared at by a powerful creature. She felt a chill down her spine. It seemed that she might die in the next second. Her whole body was cold. She looked up and saw Dustless with a cold expression. His eyes were as deep as the abyss, making Jiuyu Meimi's soul tremble. This guy's eyes are so scary. Fear flashed through her eyes. Jiuyu Meimi quickly let go of Dustless's collar and took the initiative to put some distance between them. No matter what, Dustless was a heroic spirit, and she was just a mortal. The difference between them was countless dimensions. Saber, don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. This is all a rumor he made up. Jiuyu Meimi glared at Dustless fiercely. Anyone could see that this guy was trying to drive a wedge between Saber and Wei Gong Kisi. No, what he said is the truth. At this moment, Wei Gong Kisi frankly admitted, just like what Dustless said, I plan to use Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil to attract the attention of master and servant. This guy has guts. Dustless touched his chin and couldn't help but look at Wei Gong Kisi in a new light. But, immediately after, Wei Gong Kisi lowered his voice and shouted, I want to be a partner of justice. Some sacrifices are inevitable. Even if I kill Alice Phil with my own hands one day, I can't do anything about it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as Wei Gong Kisi finished speaking, a black shadow approached him at the speed of sound. Damn scum. How dare you use my Joan of Arc to attract other people's firepower? Go to hell and repent. Bang! Wei Gong Kisi was sent flying with a single punch, and even a few of his teeth were knocked out. His face was slightly sunken in, and there was a clear red fist imprint on it. And the person who attacked Wei Gong Kisi was Castor. Well done. Dustless gave a thumbs up to Castor. It was the first time he thought that the homicidal maniac was so cute. Which side are you on, you bastard? Be clear about your position. Kuyu Mommy's mouth twitched, and black lines appeared on her forehead. She loudly reprimanded Dustless, remember that you are Alice Field's servant, and Alice Field is Wei Gong Kisi's wife. So what? That's their relationship. It has nothing to do with me. Although Saber and I are on the same side, it's hard to be loyal to such a master. It's fine if he plotted against others, but even Saber and I were plotted against by Wei Gong Kisi. Forgive me for being unable to accept this. Pfft. Kuyu Mommy almost vomited blood when she heard that. She pointed at Dustless while trembling. She didn't expect that there was someone in the world who could be shameless to this point. Wei Gong Kisi planned to do this, but before all of this could be implemented, Wei Gong Kisi was thrown into the sea by Dustless to play a swimming competition with the man-eating sharks in the Pacific Ocean. Bang bang bang. Wei Gong Kisi, who was caught by Castor, was beaten violently. The power of a hero spirit was incomparable. With just a few punches, Wei Gong Kisi's cheeks were badly mutilated. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At that moment, a ray of light rushed toward Castor's side, and a small foot covered with light hit Castor's ferocious face with full force. Lightspeed kick. Boom boom boom. That merciless kick sent Castor flying more than 10 meters away. He glanced at Wu Qin and Wei Gong Kisi fiercely, and then glanced at Saber reluctantly, and then he ran away awkwardly. It's not that Dustless wanted to save Wei Gong Kisi, but after that guy died, Saber would inevitably disappear. This guy is very cruel. I'm afraid that the recent child serial murder case reported in the news was done by him. Wei Gong Kisi stood up with an ugly face. He originally wanted to pull Castor into his camp. If the three servants joined forces, the Holy Grail would be easy to get, but who would have thought that this guy was so unreasonable? He beat him up without saying a word. Not to mention his teeth, in the end, he didn't even get a strand of hair. The most unbearable thing for Wei Gong Keisai was that he was beaten black and blue by Castor. Soon, someone will clean up Castor. Dustless stared blankly at the disappearing Castor. He still remembered that in the original work, Enosaka Toshimi joined forces with the church and other masters to suppress Castor, and the final reward was an extra command seal. But in fact, it was just a simple trap. Enosaka Toshimi and the church secretly colluded with each other. The essential purpose was to let the other masters fight, and in the end, the hero king would solve the problem. The command seal naturally belonged to Enosaka Toshimi, but the hero king disdained to deal with Castor, so Castor was killed by Saber. In the end, Enosaka Toshimi didn't even get a strand of hair, but gradually drifted away from the hero king. Chapter 1688. Forget it, don't worry about that guy, let's deal with the others first. Suddenly, Wei Gong Keisai took a puff of his cigarette and said in a deep voice, Kenneth Elmaroy. This guy is our first target, as for Castor, let someone else deal with him. This guy, he actually wants to let Castor go. This time, it was Dustless's fault. He still remembered that in the original work, the reward for killing Castor was a command seal. Such an advantage was enough to make all the mages crazy, and it was also a good opportunity to hunt other mages. But now, Wei Gong Keisai was relieved. Dustless naturally felt strange. Could it be, as if thinking of something, Dustless's eyes fell on Saber's hand. No wonder Wei Gong Keisai didn't care about the swan meat and went to deal with that stinky toad. It turned out to be the reason. Dustless glanced at Saber's left arm. Her wrist was wrapped in a white bandage. There were obvious bloodstains on the white bandage, which were very conspicuous. Lancer's noble phantasm, Yellow Rose, had a rather strange ability. It could cause irreversible damage. After being attacked by this spear, the upper limit of the HP would be reduced. Even if the user used healing magic or regeneration ability, they would only be able to recover to the injured state. The injured state would be maintained until the noble phantasm was destroyed or Lancer was eliminated. In other words, Saber's combat power was greatly reduced. Her ultimate skill, Excalibur, was also blocked by Lancer's noble phantasm. If she didn't kill Lancer, she wouldn't be able to use this ability anymore. But it's necessary to kill Lancer, I'm really sorry, Saber. Dustless walked to Saber and showed an apologetic look. Saber was stunned and asked, you didn't do anything wrong, why are you apologizing? Alice Phil is my martyr, and you hurt yourself to protect her, of course, it's my responsibility. Dustless scolded himself for being careless. Back then, all he cared about was stepping on Gilgamesh. As for Alice Field, he left her to Saber as if nothing had happened. On one hand, he had to fight a strong player like Lancer. On the other hand, he had to protect Alice Phil. There was even the extremely despicable assassin who was secretly shooting him. It was normal for Saber to be injured. Don't worry about it. We were allies at that time. On the contrary, you were the one who defeated that golden archer. I should feel proud. That guy made me feel a little threatened. Saber's face revealed a delicate and gentle smile, which warmed his heart. It's best if you can participate. Wei Gong Keisai finally heaved a sigh of relief after looking at Dustless with a gloomy expression. He originally counted on Saber and Takumi Joyu to deal with Lancer together. As for Dustless, Wei Gong Keisai did not expect him to participate. For some reason, Dustless hated and even viewed him as an enemy. Therefore, in Wei Gong Keisai's plan, there was no script for Dustless to appear. Now that he was willing to take the initiative to participate in this hunt, it was for the best. Damn it, Lancer. Why didn't you join forces with that golden archer and berserker to kill the 8th heroic spirit and those 2 guys, Saber? Bastard, who gave you the confidence to do that? In the luxurious apartment, Kenneth was angrily throwing a tantrum. The handsome man who was kneeling on one knee in front of him was his servant, Lancer. Facing the angry Kenneth Elmoroy, Lancer chose to remain silent. Lord. I will definitely defeat those 2 guys fair and square and help you obtain the Holy Grail. Please believe me. I swear in the name of Delumuto Odine. Lancer swore with a serious face. Unfortunately, his master Kenneth did not buy it. Let me make it clear. This is something that should be done. Do you still need to swear? Are you saying that if you don't swear, you won't help me obtain the Holy Grail? Watch your tone, Lancer. Kenneth snorted coldly. Judging from his tone, he was treating Lancer as a useless tool. Kenneth's eyes became colder and colder. If he could, he would immediately change to a heroic spirit with a more flexible mind. Lancer, this guy, was getting more and more unpleasant to the eye. He was extremely annoying. Moreover, his thoughts were too stubborn. It was fine as long as he could obtain the final victory. It did not matter even if he had to use despicable tricks. In Kenneth's eyes, the so-called chivalry spirit was just bullsh*t. You can talk about the chivalry spirit with others, but would others abide by this ridiculous rule with you? It was still a sneak attack. Ah, Lancer, I really pity you. Your master is very similar to that guy Wei Gong Kisi. He would do anything to achieve his goal. A frivolous voice suddenly sounded. Kenneth and Lancer were stunned at the same time. They looked towards the direction of the voice at the same time. Outside the window, there was actually a figure floating. It's you. That smiling face of Wu Chen's fell into the 2 people's eyes and was extremely asking for a beating. After that, Kenneth and Lancer both exclaimed. Among them, Kenneth's expression was the most interesting. He said furiously, "Impossible, I have set up a lot of." Stupid thing, do you think those tricks to trick children will work on heroic spirits? No wonder an idiot like you was killed by Wei Gong Kisi's plot. You're so stupid. Dustless sneered loudly. He snorted at the barrier that Kenneth had set up. Chapter 1689. Dustless was not looking down on Kenneth, but he was too naive. Although a magician was powerful, there was a huge difference between a human and a hero spirit. If the difference could be easily made up, why would a hero spirit be needed in a battle? Is this fella here to provoke me? Kenneth's eyeballs moved quickly as his face turned serious. Dustless was coming at them aggressively. It seemed like they had no other choice but to fight him. Your Majesty, let me have a fight to the death with this guy. Lancer stared at Wu Chen with burning eyes. His eyes were filled with a burning desire to fight. However, Kenneth, who was hesitant, ignored him. Idiot, don't you know there's a saying that there must be something wrong if something is out of the ordinary? Or are all hero spirits so stupid? There must be a trap for him to come to us. Kenneth stared at Lancer angrily and cursed him for being stupid. No, we can't fight him. We must drag it out. This fella must have set a trap for us since he came to us. Wouldn't we be idiots if we step on the landmine without hesitation? Kenneth shook his head decisively after pondering for more than 10 seconds. He smiled proudly as he stared at Dustless. I know what you're planning to do. Saber was stabbed by Lancer and she can't use her arm anymore. Her combat power will be greatly reduced. You came to us in such a hurry because you want to break the curse on Lancer's relic, right? Yo, it's a miracle. You idiot, you're smart. Dustless was actually mocking Kenneth. But you're such a despicable person. Will it work if you reject me? You're so naive that I'll think that you're a kid. You want to force me to fight? Don't even think about it. Kenneth rejected him decisively, ignoring Lancer's burning desire to fight. He was sure that Dustless came to him and there must be a trap for him. He would fall into the trap if he challenged him. Hee. It's good that we don't fight. Actually, compared to violent fights, I prefer things that men like to do. Dustless suddenly laughed sinisterly and teased, "Oh right, I forgot to tell you just now. Your fiancée, Sora Nazirii Sophia, is crying and begging you to marry her. TSK, if you refuse, then such a beautiful woman will be mine. You took Sola away. Bastard. Just when did the heroic spirit summoned by the Holy Grail war become so shameless and perverted? Damned bastard." Kenneth trembled as he pointed at Dustless. His vision turned black, and he almost passed out from anger. He stared straight at Dustless. The impact of these words was no less than being struck by lightning. As a heroic spirit, you are an out-and-out hero. You even used such a despicable and ugly method. Kenneth, who had regained his senses, was furious. He cursed Dustless in his heart for being so shameless. This bastard kept saying that he and Wei Gong Kisi were despicable, but they even kidnapped a hostage. Who could be more despicable than Dustless? TSK, this really has nothing to do with me. It was Wei Gong Kisi who did it. Dustless continued to laugh sinisterly and exerted pressure. He even showed an expression that said, "Don't blame me." He also pushed all the responsibility to Wei Gong Kisi. The so-called protagonist was actually used as a scapegoat. "Master of Lancer, since you're not going to fight, then I'll retreat. She's called Sola, right? That beautiful woman is still waiting for me to spend the night with her. She's crazy about such a handsome heroic spirit like me." Dustless showed a strange and wretched expression that all men understood. Then, he disappeared from Kenneth's sight. Plop. Kenneth, who couldn't take the blow, fainted. The moment he closed his eyes, Sola Nazirii Sophia's sobbing face suddenly appeared in his mind, as well as Dustless, who was unscrupulously abusing her. Kenneth immediately stood up and kicked Lancer in annoyance. He roared furiously, "Damn it, why are you still standing here, you idiot? Hurry up and chase after her. Do you want to see another green hat on my head?" Kenneth roared in a deranged manner. He even cursed. Lancer's reaction to battle could be said to be perfect, but when it came to this kind of matter that concerned a man's dignity, he became nervous. Green hat. Lancer was stunned for a moment. Then, he came to a realization after thinking about it carefully. He promised solemnly, "My lord, don't worry. Leave Madame's safety to me. Also, you don't have to worry. Madame will definitely not be charmed by that guy. Although he's more handsome than you, I believe that with your charisma, you'll definitely capture Madame's heart." Before leaving, Lancer suddenly advised Kenneth out of kindness. However, the latter only stared at Lancer blankly. That absent-minded gaze was obviously questioning, "You and Dustless are purposely attacking me, right?" Caw. Lancer stabbed the transparent tempered glass with his spear and looked at Dustless's disappearing figure from afar. He decisively gave chase at full speed. "You're quite fast. You've caught up in such a short time." Dustless turned his head and stared at the black figure that was gradually closing in on him. His cheeks no longer had the frivolous look from before. Instead, it was replaced by endless coldness. Damn that guy. Wei Gong Keisai doesn't deserve to be a magician. He even used such disgusting methods. I must personally chop him into 8 pieces to vent my anger. Kenneth clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he growled. He was really disgusted by Dustless. He pushed all the blame onto Wei Gong Keisai. Chapter 1690. Kenneth walked out of the apartment in a huff. He couldn't control the flames in his heart as he stood in the hallway. His spittle flew everywhere as he cursed Wei Gong Qixi for being despicable and shameless. He even cursed his 18 generations of ancestors. As a magician, he actually kidnapped someone else's fiancée to blackmail them. He was too shameless. What nonsense is this guy spouting? Kidnap his fiancée? Qixi, have you done such a thing before? Why didn't I know about it? In the underground parking lot, Wei Gong Qixi and Takeo Jiuyu were speechless as they were setting up the bombs. They had installed invisible listening devices in the entire apartment. Kenneth's cursing and scolding all fell into the ears of Wei Gong Qixi and Takeo Jiuyu. God knows what he's talking about. Especially Wei Gong Qixi, his face was almost the color of a pig's liver. He really wanted to grab Kenneth and beat him up, then ask him when he kidnapped his fiancée. This was completely unreasonable. Don't worry about such trivial matters. Our plan seems to have been superfluous. Dustless has already forced Kenneth out. He has set up all kinds of barriers and traps in this building. We will be at a disadvantage if we fight here. Let's go to Dustless' place and work together with him to get rid of Kenneth and Lancer. Wei Gong Qixi lit a cigarette and took a leisurely puff before saying, "Let's go to Dustless' place. Kenneth is probably rushing there as well." Under the black night sky, in an abandoned warehouse, it was as terrifying as hell. Sharp screams could be heard from time to time, and blurry ghostly shadows were reflected on the walls. Even breathing was several times more difficult than usual. "Don't kill me." Kenneth's fiancée, Sora, looked at the approaching figure in fear. Fear appeared on her delicate face. "That will depend on how you please me." The tone of boredom spread throughout the deathly silent room. Dustless sat on the chair with a lazy expression and looked at Sora, who was hiding in the corner. He realized that Lancer would still need a while to rush over. He stared at Sora's scared face and couldn't help but tease her. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. A strong gravitational force erupted from his palm, and Sola's body floated over uncontrollably. "It's a long night. Don't you think you need some entertainment to pass the time?" Dustless grabbed Sola's throat and asked evilly. "As long as you don't kill me, I'll agree to any of your conditions." Sola looked at Dustless with a begging expression. "Really? That's for the best." Dustless pointed to his left and right legs. He closed his eyes and said, "Massage my legs. If I'm satisfied, you can leave here safely." "I understand." Sora nodded obediently before kneeling on the ground and massaging Dustless's legs rhythmically with her soft hands. Bang bang bang. Poochie. 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 After a few loud gunshots, Sola stopped moving and fell to the ground. The smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air. Dustless opened his eyes and looked at Sola. Her body was covered in blood and flesh. Her abdomen was also badly mutilated, and the finger-sized wound was clearly visible. A heroic spirit really knows how to enjoy life. Two silhouettes walked out from the dark corner. Looking sideways, it was Wei Gong Qixi, who was wearing black clothes, and his assistant, Takeo Jiuyu. "She's a scourge." Wei Gong Qixi glanced at Sola, who was unwilling to die, and said expressionlessly, "If you want to resent someone, you can only resent yourself for being Kenneth's fiancée. Do you think you can fool me with that ridiculous trick of yours?" Wei Gong Qixi. Lifting his eyelids, Dustless stared at Wei Gong Qixi's cold face and sneered, "Even if she wasn't Kenneth's fiancée, you still wouldn't let her go. For a person who was distorted by the so-called righteous companions, he wouldn't care how many people were sacrificed in order to achieve his goal." Anyway, in Wei Gong Qixi's eyes, these were necessary sacrifices. Sola. At the same time, a sorrowful cry sounded. Looking at the direction where the sound came from, it was Lancer and Kenneth. Damned Wei Gong Kisi, Sola didn't participate in this war. Why did you do this to her? Kenneth asked with red eyes, looking like a gambler who had lost everything. Don't think that I don't know. Although you have signed a contract with Lancer, the magic that sustains Lackner is provided by this woman. She can only blame herself for this. Looking at Kenneth's eyes that were filled with hatred, Wei Gong Kisi answered frankly. Lackner, I'll leave that heroic spirit to you. Get rid of these eyesores for me. Kenneth roared crazily. Dustless left Lackner to him and he pounced on Wei Gong Kisi. He couldn't wait to die together with him. I will definitely complete your mission, Lord. Lancer also stared at Wu Qin in an unfriendly manner. A shocking viciousness occasionally flashed across his eyes. Bring it on, Lancer. This is your last performance. Try your best to dance. Don't disappoint me. Dustless, who was sitting on the chair, smiled. He supported his chin with his right hand and looked at Lancer with an expectant expression. As you wish. Lancer's gaze froze and he stared at Dustless for a while. Then, he turned into a straight black shadow and charged over. Meanwhile, Wei Gong Kisi and Kenneth were entangled in a fight. Chapter 1691. The dense cold light was coming at him at an extremely fast speed. Within a few seconds, Lancer, who was wielding his relic, had stabbed hundreds of times. Unfortunately, Dustless seemed to be omniscient as he was able to avoid the fatal attacks every time. God is really ruthless. Dustless took the initiative to communicate with Lancer as his body floated backward. Don't talk nonsense. Just bring it on. Lancer's eyes were as deep as the abyss as he held the crimson spear in his hand. Nonsense. Don't you think fate is cruel? God is really cruel and heartless to let the perfect me meet you who is full of flaws. Dustless sighed with extreme narcissism and looked at Lancer with eyes full of pity. You're too much. Hearing this, Lancer waved the spear in his hand again. The sharp tip of the spear pounced toward Dustless's head. Elemental transformation. Dustless's body was covered in a bright golden light as he did not hesitate to use his best skill. Pfft. The spear fiercely pierced through Wu Chen's head, penetrating between his eyebrows. However, the strange thing was that there was no blood flowing out of the wound. Moreover, the feeling was extremely strange. It gave people the feeling that they had hit the air. What kind of hero spirit is this guy? Lancer quickly pulled out the relic that was pierced through Dustless's head. In an instant, the wound was healed at the speed of light. It seemed like nothing had happened at all. He stared at Dustless cautiously. His bottomless eyes were as terrifying as the abyss. Nature's attraction. He grabbed the air and a strong gravitational force exploded. An invisible force distorted the surrounding environment. Wherever the gravitational force reached, the laws of physics would lose their effect and everything would float. Lancer was the same. Get over here. With a loud shout, the chakra in Dustless's body increased the output by a few times. Lancer, who was initially struggling, suddenly lost control of his body. You're courting death. A ferocious look appeared on Lancer's face. He simply stopped resisting and used the inertia of gravity to lunge at Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Lancer waved his spear with all his might, and the cold light scattered. It looked like Dustless's head was going to be pierced into a beehive. Lancer's idea was extremely crafty. There was no way to escape. No matter which direction he dodged in, he would be torn apart by the cold light. Die! Lancer seemed to have seen through Dustless's miserable death and revealed a victorious smile. Bang bang bang. At the same time, a majestic repulsive force suddenly broke out of his body. Lancer, who was caught off guard, was also affected. His proud face instantly turned tragic. Shinra Tensei. Lancer's body was sent flying by the super-strong repulsive force. Caw caw caw. The hard wall was cracked by him, and there was even a dent in it. Lancer's mouth was stained with fresh blood. This guy can actually control gravity and repulsive force at the same time. Lancer wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was in severe pain, as if he was being pricked by needles. He had to gasp for breath just to move his body slightly. It was extremely strenuous. If an ordinary person was hit, they would have been turned into a bloody pulp. TSK, your body is very strong. His eyes moved around Lancer. The bones in this guy's body were faintly showing signs of falling apart. It could be said that it was a miracle that he could still stand up. You're still far from defeating me. After taking a breath of cold air, the pain in Lancer's body eased a little. He stared at Dustless with a burning gaze. There was no sign of discouragement on his handsome face. I really don't understand people like you. You know that the difference in strength is like heaven and earth, but you still refuse to give up in the end. A tenacious spirit like perseverance can't make up for the difference in strength. Dustless shook his head to express his confusion. At the same time, a blue light appeared on his fingertips. Void flash. Boom. 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 The energy ball was flicked out by Dustless's finger and instantly annihilated Lancer. There was a violent explosion. Lancer did not even have the time to scream before he was eroded by the high-density energy ball. Plop. Lancer lay in the crater, his entire body charred beyond recognition. The high temperature from the void flash explosion had burned him to the point where he didn't even look like a human anymore. He was still panting, but his consciousness had already fainted. Let me give you the final blow. Looking at Lancer, who was howling in pain, a big shiny sword appeared in Dustless's hand. The light that was reflected was accompanied by a scorching attack. It could easily burn the skin of a human with just a touch. Damn trash, Lancer, this useless trash. It's fine if you can't help me at this time, but you actually want me to help you out. Useless trash. On the other side, Kenneth cursed fiercely. He did not expect Lancer to be so useless. After being beaten up by Dustless, he was coldly suppressed without even having the strength to retaliate. Get lost. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Kenneth suddenly got rid of Wei Gong Kisi and turned to Jiu Mami, who had the weakest strength. He quickly grabbed her and subdued her in a flash. That perverted heroic spirit, if you don't want this guy to die, quickly stay away from Lancer. Kenneth shouted at Dustless. He did not want to lose, nor did he want to withdraw from this Holy Grail war in advance. If Lancer died, it would mean that everything was over. Kenneth did not want to leave in grief. Chapter 1692. Staring at Dustless with a ferocious look, Kenneth glared back with a stern expression. However, Kenneth sadly discovered that although he was angry, the consequences weren't serious at all. Dustless stepped on Lancer's body and looked at him frivolously. Miss Woomy, you should be very happy to die for justice, right? Dustless stared at the pale-faced Jiu Woomy and sent Kenneth to hell with one sentence. Wei Gong Jishi's expression changed when he heard that. His eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. He remained silent. Ha! Kenneth was hit hard by Dustless's words and said angrily, You bastard, this is your master's mistress. Can you bear the consequences of her death? No. Shaking his finger a few times, Dustless smiled indifferently and said, I think Miss Woomy will be very willing to sacrifice herself. Jiu Woomy glared at Dustless and looked at him angrily. She stuttered for a moment and didn't know how to answer. If she could live, who would choose to die? Moreover, Juyu Wumi still hoped that after Alice Phil disappeared, she would become the official mistress and live the fairy tale life of her dreams. It seems like you don't want to. Kenneth heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that. Joy appeared on his face. He was really afraid that Juyu Wumi would say something like, "I'm not afraid of death. I must kill Lancer," or something like that. Dustless, kill Lancer. At this moment, Weigong Jishi ordered with a cold face. Are you crazy? This guy is your secret lover. Are you going to ignore her life and death now? Kenneth shouted in disbelief. He must have investigated Weigong Jishi's matter clearly. The secret relationship between Juyu Wumi and Weigong Jishi naturally couldn't escape Kenneth's eyes. Jishi, Juyu Wumi lowered her head with a complicated expression. Her eyes were filled with crystal tears. Swish swish swish. Suddenly, an unexpected cold light attacked. Dustless was stunned. The moment he turned around, a cold light attacked his heart. Poochie. A blood-red hole appeared where Dustless's heart was. His whole body was pierced through by the cold light. If his heart was destroyed, even a heroic spirit would die. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They all stared at the figure behind Dustless in unison, and an unexpected figure appeared before their eyes. It was Lancer, who was severely exhausted. Lancer actually sneak attacked me. Your knighthood spirit should be very valuable. You shouldn't do such a despicable thing like sneak attack. Dustless stared blankly at Lancer, who had a painful expression. Ha 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 ha. At this moment, an unusually proud laugh came from Kenneth's mouth. He was beaming with joy. You bunch of idiots. With Lancer's character, he definitely wouldn't do something like a sneak attack. However, pointing at the command incantation on his arm, Kenneth laughed and said, "But if I were to use the Lancer to pretend to be dead and attack you, everything would be different." Master, are you that despicable? Lancer's face was filled with pain. Looking at Kenneth, who was laughing proudly, he did not hide the disgust deep in his eyes. Shut up, you idiot. You've ruined my reputation, and now you've caused Soulless death. Do you still dare to blame me, you useless piece of trash servant? Moreover, I let you kill this guy. You should thank me. Kenneth laughed crazily, completely ignoring the knighthood. The masters of the Holy Grail War would not follow this idiotic and ridiculous fallacy. Swish swish swish. A straight ray of light cut through the dark and oppressive environment, turning into a sharp lightsaber and went straight for Koni's, who was gloating. Poochie. This ray of light instantly pierced through his abdomen, and a hole the size of a human head appeared. His disgusting laughter also disappeared in an instant. Who did this? Ignoring the piercing pain all over his body, Kenneth looked for the initiator of the sneak attack. Ah! The culprit is right in front of you. What are you looking at? A lazy voice was heard. Kenneth immediately followed the voice and skimmed over. To his astonishment, it was Dustless. You should be dead. Your wound has healed. Bullshit. Kenneth looked as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed in a panic, "That's impossible. I ordered Lancer to destroy your heart. Destroying the heart will kill. That's for ordinary masters and servant. Don't forget, this guy is the 8th heroic spirit that shouldn't have appeared. His way of existence is special and unreasonable. The law that applies to ordinary people naturally doesn't apply to Dustless." Takeo Juyu coldly glanced at Kenneth, who was stunned. She did not hide her sneer. Damn it. Sensing that his life was fading away, Kenneth was like a mad dog. When he wanted to drag Takeo Juyu down with him, it was already too late. Bang bang bang. A few shots were fired consecutively. Kenneth's head was shot into blood, leaving behind a few huge holes. He and Lancer finally disappeared together forever. With Lancer's death, the curse left on Saber's arm also disappeared. We finally got rid of Lancer. It's a success. Let's go back, Takeo Joyu. Wei Gong Kisi showed a rare smile and took the initiative to greet Takeo Joyu. He wanted to give her a warm hug, but who knew that this guy only nodded coldly. Although they won this war, Wei Gong Kisi also lost the people's hearts because of it. Chapter 1693. Serves you right. Glancing at the indifferent Joyu Mamie, Dustless wasn't surprised. Wei Gong Kisi was someone who could sacrifice others for his own justice, so it was normal for him to be hated. His protagonist aura was also limited. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ignoring Joyu Mamie and Wei Gong Kisi, Dustless turned into a flash of light and disappeared from sight. Cough cough, Mamie, I have something to say. Awkwardly coughing twice, Wei Gong Kisi revealed an apologetic expression and cleared his throat. When he was about to apologize, Joyu Mamie's words made him raise his eyebrows. Maybe the so-called justice that I insisted on before was wrong. Just like what Dustless said to Alice Phil a few days ago, creating a world where there is only justice. Our dreams might be too illusory. Joyu Mamie's eyes lit up, and her light tone carried a sense of relief. People don't have to bear anything when they are alive. As long as they feel happy, it is enough. The person who can decide their own fate is often themselves. This is what Dustless said. You, Wei Gong Kisi was dumbfounded. Damn, do you need to be so deceptive? How could a heroic spirit's casual words be able to turn his best friend who had followed him for many years? This is simply too deceptive. What kind of charm does that kid have? Wei Gong Kisi's weathered face had some other emotions, jealousy. Don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. He is just a heroic spirit. What is there to listen to the words of a dead person? Mamie, don't be deceived by him. Wei Gong Kisi nervously explained. The young woman in front of him was his spiritual food. If Joyu Mamie betrayed him, just thinking about the consequences made Wei Gong Kisi break out in cold sweat. Ever since Dustless, this jinx, appeared, his former best friend, even his servant, became unreliable. Dongmu City, Ahrensburg family's villa. What should I eat tonight? In the brightly lit luxurious villa, Dustless was rushing to the dining hall. After the big battle, his stomach was grumbling in protest. Saber. Is it just you? Where is my master, Alice Phil? After stepping into the restaurant, Dustless looked around and found that Saber was the only one who hungrily devoured the dazzling array of food. She was so fast that it was shocking. It was hard to imagine that such a petite girl would have an even more terrifying appetite than a burly man who had been starving for more than 10 days. It seems to be in another room. The people from the church have rushed over. It seems that they have a mission for Alice Field. Sabra's mouth was covered in grease, and she blushed when she realized that she had lost her composure. A notice from the church. Hearing that, Dustless frowned and asked, if it's the church, they can use, familiar demon, to go there. Why did they come here? I can only ask Alice Phil about the specifics. I don't know what they're talking about. But before that, I want to thank you. Sabra walked in front of Dustless and smiled sincerely. Then, she bowed solemnly. The curse on my arm has disappeared. You killed Lancer, right? No need to thank me. It's just a small matter. We don't owe each other anything from now on. Dustless didn't mind. He had a good impression of Saber. Besides, Saber was injured because of his own carelessness. Ta 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 ta. At the same time, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Looking up, a flawless face and straight white hair invaded his eyes first. Looking closely, it was Alice Phil. The Church of Holy Light wants us to stop the Holy Grail War immediately and kill Satyr temporarily, Alice Phil said happily. After completing the mission, we'll receive a command charm. What's going to happen can't be stopped. Dustless sighed. Then, he asked curiously, I heard that the person who came to inform us is someone from the church. Is it Yen Feng Chi Li? In the previous battle, his assassin was killed. I remember that he applied for the church's protection. It's not Yen Feng Chi Li, but the person who came to inform us is related to him. Alice Phil shook her head and gave an unexpected answer. It's his father, Yen Feng Chi Li. I heard from Satyr that he's the supervisor of the Holy Grail War. Saber nodded slightly and didn't suspect anything. Then, she explained, since it was sent in the name of the church, there shouldn't be any shady dealings behind this mission. I guess all the masters will participate. Even if they can't get the command charm, they don't want the enemy to get it. Supervisor. Are you talking about that old man, Yen Feng Chi Li? In fact, he's already in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. Dustless curled his lips and said disdainfully, that old man is in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. As for the supervisor, it's even more ridiculous. Yen Feng Chi Li, the son of Yen Feng Chi Li, is participating in this Holy Grail War. All fairness has become unfairness. Also, Dustless's face fell. He sneered in his heart, that old man has a bunch of command charms. He can give them to whoever he wants. He's a big problem. I might as well kill him. Since the word fairness had lost its meaning, then the supervisor, Yen Feng Chi Li, had also lost its meaning. In the dead of night, Dustless's clone secretly snuck into the church and secretly killed off Yen Feng Chi Li. Yen Feng Chi Li was present during this, but he couldn't do anything against Dustless. He could only watch helplessly. Chapter 1694. Bang bang bang. There were a few crisp sounds coming from Toshiomi Enosaka's house. Toshiomi Enosaka lost his usual calmness, his face was ferocious, and he even smashed some delicate porcelain in anger. Looking at the fragments all over the ground, even so, the raging flames in Toshiomi Enosaka's eyes were still burning, he still couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. Yen Fengli was dead. This sudden news hit Toshiomi Enosaka a lot. Yen Fengli was one of his important allies. With a special relationship with the church, he could also cheat, but now, in short, Toshiomi Enosaka was very angry now. Master, an old-fashioned, emotionless voice invaded his ears. Toshiomi Enosaka immediately changed his face. As a noble magician, it was necessary to pay attention to elegance at all times. Kaylee. I am deeply saddened by the death of your father. Toshiomi Enosaka showed a painful and sad look. After all, it was his important ally, it was normal to be sad when he died. But, Toshiomi Enosaka continued, I hope you can continue to maintain the relationship between the church and the Enosaka family, so that it will be good for both of us. I will, Master. Yen Fengli still nodded with no expression. In fact, he didn't have any sadness or tears for Yen Fengli's death. Not even a trace of tears. As for the reason, Yen Fengli didn't know. One day later. What, you ordered us to kill Castor? In the villa of the Ahrensburg family, Dustless stared at Kimiko Kissy and Alice Phil, his head was buzzing. He had already killed Yen Feng and Li Zheng, so this boring mission should be over. Is there anything wrong? Kimiko Kissy looked at Dustless's eyes and asked faintly. Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this. He thought to himself, it seems that the people of the church have sealed off the death of Yen Feng Rizheng. It should be Toshimi and Yen Feng Kaylee who did it. These two guys are really shameless. They actually want to get something for nothing. Since Yen Fengrijing was dead, the quest reward of killing Satyr and obtaining a command seal was obviously not going to be fulfilled. However, Toshiomi Inaka and Yen Fengrijing were still trying to trick everyone into fighting Satyr. What else could it be other than trying to gain something without risking anything? Not only that, the overseer of the Holy Grail War had been killed. This meant that all the illegal activities in the past had become legal. All sorts of crazy methods could be used. Anyway, this time, it's going to be a luxurious hunting feast. Dustless and Saber are responsible for dealing with Castor, and I'll secretly snipe the other masters. Wei Gong Kisi's eyes lit up. Since the masters chose to stop the Holy Grail War and temporarily kill Castor, then this mission must gather all the masters. Wei Gong Kisi could also hide in the dark and kill them one by one. Despicable. Saber snorted with dissatisfaction. She was very unhappy with Wei Gong Kisi's behavior. Wumi, come with me to prepare. Wei Gong Kisi completely ignored Saber's complaint and left. Dustless, you also need to prepare a little. Even if we can't get the command seal, we can't let it fall into the hands of others. Looking at Dustless's lazy eyes, Alice Field solemnly reminded him that Castor violated the rules of the Holy Grail War and killed innocent people. This is entirely for his own selfish reasons. His master is also not a good person. Saber, who had a strong sense of justice, hated Castor deeply. She couldn't wait to get rid of him. Not only Castor, but his master is also a pervert. Not only is he not a good person, but that guy also discussed the fun of killing with Castor. Dustless rolled his eyes and said, the combination of Yu Xinglong Jijia and Castor was definitely the most perverted kind. That. Dustless, actually, I have a very puzzling question to ask you. Alice Field stared at Dustless suspiciously and said the doubts in her heart, Sarvant's existence needs its master to provide mana, why don't you need me to provide mana? Dustless stared at Alice Field, he really didn't know how to answer this question. That's because my own mana is extremely large, I don't need the master to provide mana. After being silent for a long time, Dustless made up a somewhat reasonable reason. He was not a real heroic spirit, and he didn't need any mana to fight. The command seal on Alice Field's wrist was just for show. It was wishful thinking to control him. The situation is indeed like what Dustless said. Even if Satyr suddenly dies, as long as the heroic spirit's own mana storage is high, it is not difficult to maintain the body. Saber stepped forward to help. She stared at Dustless in disbelief and exclaimed, you should have consumed a lot of mana in the previous battle. Yet, you can still maintain your physical form without being affected. How ridiculous is your mana storage? That's not the point. Dustless looked at Saber's admiring face and coughed twice embarrassedly. How could he maintain the body forever? It had nothing to do with the mana, because Dustless himself was not dead, naturally, he could maintain the body indefinitely. As for the huge amount of mana that Saber said, Dustless didn't even have a trace. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.